Chapter 386. Yiling Feng waved his fan and walked out leisurely. Every step he took was elegant, solemn, and candid. When he arrived in front of the crowd, he clasped his hands together and smiled. I am Yiling Feng, handsome and confident. My face is like Song Yu's, and my appearance is better than Pan An's. Greetings, everyone. Originally, the crowd was still subdued by this handsome man, but the moment he opened his mouth, everyone's worldview was shattered. Chu Qingyan touched the goosebumps on her arm. She really wanted to ask, bro, do you still have your integrity? As if he was already used to everyone's gazes, Yiling Feng's gaze landed on Chu Qingyan. He smiled amiably and said, this must be Brother Xiao's wife. She is really obedient and wanly. Brother Xiao is a perfect match. Hearing his words, Chu Qingyan trembled with goosebumps again. She was still young and dressed in men's clothes. How could he see her beauty? This person really seemed to have soaked in honey. He was so glib-tongued. No wonder Big Ice Cube said that he had been through thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf touched him. He was simply a typical example of a romantic wastrel. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at him. You have a problem with that? Yiling Feng flung away his fan and covered his mouth to smile. I dare not. I dare not. It's just that when we parted that year, I thought Brother Xiao would be alone for the rest of his life. I didn't expect you to find a partner earlier than me and Feng Yi. It's really unexpected. Chu Qingyan deeply agreed. With Big Ice Cube's personality, he might really be alone for the rest of his life. However, when she thought about it again, she found it funny that she was dragged into it again. Chu Qingyan greets young Master Yi. The trip to Jiang country will depend on young Master Yi. Chu Qingyan nodded in greeting. After all, politeness demands reciprocity. Although this person looked a bit like a playboy, he spoke elegantly, and she quite liked his personality. Moreover, he could become friends with Big Ice Cube. He must have his unique side. After all, one could not judge a person by their appearance. Thus, it was very important to have a good relationship with him. Your family's girl is still the most polite. Your personality is like a latrine stone, smelly and hard. Yiling Feng looked at Xiao Su with some disdain. Xiao Su was familiar with his good friend's personality. If he allowed him to continue talking, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to avoid anything. You always talk so much nonsense. Yiling Feng waved his fan and shrugged. You're always so quiet. If your girl lived with you, she would probably be bored to death by you. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she once again deeply agreed. She wanted to nod, but when she met the Big Ice Cube's gaze, her neck stiffened and she didn't dare to move. She grinned at him to express her goodwill, but unfortunately, he didn't appreciate it and turned his head to ignore her. Let's go. If we don't leave now, it's going to be dark soon. Tonight, this young master is going to bring you all to Linlang Pavilion to listen to music. Recently, there have been a few beautiful ladies with graceful figures. Their singing is really good. Yiling Feng called out. As soon as he finished speaking, a few people who looked like servants appeared out of nowhere. They took the luggage from Xining and the others and led them forward. Chu Qingyan turned her head with some confusion and asked, Big Ice Cube, what kind of place is this Linlang Pavilion? Is it a restaurant? When she heard Yiling Feng talking about singing, why did she have the misconception that it was a place of fireworks and wine? Xiao Su's expression was indifferent. Don't pay attention to him. He's just talking nonsense again. Chu Qingyan nodded. At this moment, a solicitous voice sounded from behind them. May I ask your name? How old are you? Where do you live? Are you engaged? Are your parents still alive? Do you have someone you like? Wasn't this Yiling Feng's voice? Chu Qingyan turned her head and saw Yiling Feng smiling like a spring breeze. He bent over and asked Chung Yinluo seriously. Cough, cough. Was this called a graceful version of flirting? Big Ice Cube. Is this how people in the Jiang kingdom hit on girls? Chu Qingyan twitched her mouth and asked the person beside her. He's not from the Jiang kingdom. This is his personal nature. You don't have to pay attention to him. Someone will come to tease him later. Xiao Su calculated the time. That person should be arriving soon. Who is it? Chu Qingyan was full of curiosity. Chung Yinluo did not expect this person to be so bold as to ask so many questions at once. She wanted to turn him down with a cold face, But when she caught a glimpse of the indifferent look on Kong Ling's face, she was inexplicably annoyed. Without thinking, she put on a smile and said, "My name is Cheng Yanluo. Greetings to young master." She thought that Ling Feng would be rebuffed. She didn't expect to hear such a sweet reply from Sister Yanluo. She almost fell. Cheng Yanluo. What a good name. Ling Feng patted his fan and smiled charmingly. It's right for a gentle and beautiful lady like Miss Cheng to come to the Jiang Kingdom. There's nothing much to say about the Jiang Kingdom. It's famous for women's accessories. When the time comes, I'll bring Miss Cheng around. Perhaps you'll find something you like. Then I'll have to trouble you, young master. Cheng Yanluo smiled. When Huoling saw this, he poked the person beside him. "Hey, your woman is about to be stolen. Why aren't you stopping him? She has her own freedom. I have no right to interfere." Ethereal looked away. He didn't want to see her chatting intimately with someone else. However, just because he couldn't see it didn't mean that he couldn't hear it. He heard the conversation, and his expression turned ugly. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. Had Sister Yanluo changed her personality? Didn't she hate flirtatious men? What was wrong with her today? Ling Feng had already prepared a carriage for them. After they got in, they headed to the nearest city gate. The group was travel-worn, but they soon arrived at a restaurant. The words Linlang Pavilion were written on the signboard. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtains and saw a group of scantily clad women leaning against the railings. They greeted them when they saw them. "Dear guests, we have the most expensive sea cucumbers and the most delicious abalones. Come in and have a taste." If they hadn't mentioned food, she would have thought that they were in a brothel. It was still somewhat unbearable to be so ostentatious in broad daylight. Huoling and the rest exchanged glances before turning to look at their master, waiting for his orders. Chu Qingyan also turned to look at him. To be honest, she wouldn't be able to eat anything in such a place, no matter how good the food was. "What's wrong? Aren't you getting off the carriage? This is a place I specially chose. Not only can you eat delicious food, but you can also admire beauties. There's no other place like this in the entire town." Ling Feng walked to the side of Xiao Su's carriage and leisurely spoke while fanning himself with his fan. Xiao Su looked at him coldly. "I'll give you two choices. Go somewhere else, or stay here and let us go." Ling Feng sighed. "You're still the same. You've been traveling for so many years. What's there to be afraid of? What a waste of resources." After he said that, he turned around and beckoned everyone to leave for the next location. Chapter 387. As the carriage continued to move forward, Chu Qingyan opened her mouth and said, "Big ice cube, your friend is really unexpected." Xiao Su curled his lips. "He was just teasing you just now. He won't really bring you in. Then why is he doing this? Is it really fun?" Chu Qingyan rubbed her head, not understanding this person's personality. Xiao Su shook his head helplessly. This friend of his found joy in provoking him, but he couldn't do it every time, so he would occasionally think of some dirty tricks. There were women and children in the carriage, so he knew that no matter how mischievous he still had a sense of propriety. Not long after, the carriage stopped again. This time it was a restaurant. "Young Master welcome, welcome. You haven't come to our Yellow Crane restaurant in a while." The moment he saw Ling Feng, the restaurant owner came out to welcome him. "We even brought an important guest today. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling." The restaurant owner's flattery made Ling Feng reveal a smile. "Boss Lin is too polite. Prepare a large private room. This young master wants to entertain a guest." Good, good, good. I will have someone arrange it. This way, please." Boss Lin was very respectful as he bowed in invitation. Ling Feng turned around and smiled at everyone. "The Jiang country's dishes here are very authentic. Try it later." Thus, everyone followed him up the stairs. What is this Ling Feng's background? Why is the restaurant owner so attentive to him? Chu Qingyan followed a few steps behind and asked Huoling. Huoling replied, "The family is in the silk business, and their shops are all over the Jiang country, monopolizing the clothing of the imperial harem of the Jiang country's imperial family. Young Master is the only son of the family, so this subordinate doesn't need to say anything. This little young master can already guess young Master Yi's background in the Jiang country. Chu Qingyin clicked her tongue. If it was just shops all over the Jiang country, it wouldn't be a big deal, but if he was in charge of the Jiang country's imperial family's clothing, then it would be different. Whether it was the common people or the high officials and nobles, they had always used the imperial harem's clothing as the mainstream clothing every year. Once a harem wore a certain clothing, it would quickly become popular in the high society. For a merchant to be able to reach such a stage, it would be a lie if he didn't have many connections behind him. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyin's eyes lit up slightly. The royal clothes of the Jiang kingdom? Then, could he follow this path to find the ice crystal flower? When the dishes were served, Yiling Feng invited everyone to enjoy. Mrs. Chu was a little tired, so she went to her room with Mr. Chu to rest. Xiao Su, Chu Qingyin, Cheng Yinluo, and the others sat around the table. After introducing the dishes on the table, Yiling Feng fell to gaze on him. He paused and turned around. Little girl from the Xiao family, you keep looking at me. Aren't you worried that Xiao Su will be jealous? Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. She's just guessing your identity. I see. Yiling Feng opened his fan and waved it. Little girl from the Xiao family, your family Xiao Su really understands you. You almost scared this young master to death. You shouldn't covet your friend's wife. The corners of Chu Qingyin's mouth twitched. This person really didn't know what to say. Xiao Su said coldly, even food can't shut your mouth. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but praise him in her heart. The big ice cube was really domineering. You're really protective. I was just teasing you, but you're serious. But honestly, little girl from the Xiao family, you've been looking at me for so long. Do you have any questions? Yiling Feng didn't care about his friend's cold face. He said with great interest, do you think that I'm handsome, so you want to abandon the dark side and join the light side? Abandon the dark side and join the light side? The usage of this idiom was really too. Chu Qingyin suddenly felt that with such a friend, the big ice cube would be even colder. Young Master Yi, you're thinking too much. Qingyin heard that you're in the royal silk business. Have you heard of the ice crystal flower? She didn't beat around the bush and chose to get straight to the point. Sister Yin Luo said that the snake kiss poison could only be controlled for 81 days. Almost half of the time had passed. If there was no progress, then the poison in the big ice cube's body. Yiling Feng raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised by Chu Qingyin's straightforwardness. He didn't answer Chu Qingyin. Instead, he turned to Xiao Su and said, are you sure that your little wife is 10 years old and not 20 years old? You can't judge a book by its cover. Xiao Su took a sip of tea and replied slowly. Chu Qingyin raised her eyebrows. She had to admit that this playboy had seen countless people in the field of love. He could tell her mental age at a glance. However, her age was there for all to see, so she wasn't afraid that he would see through her. Instead, she waited for his answer with sparkling eyes. You seem to be quite proud, Yiling Feng muttered to himself. Then, he turned to Chu Qingyin and said seriously, I already know about the ice crystal flower. However, for so many years, there has been a rumor in the Jiang kingdom that the ice crystal flower is in the Jiang kingdom's imperial palace and is being carefully kept in the imperial study by the Jiang kingdom's emperor. It's a pity that this is only a rumor. I've sent people to inquire about it. So many officials have entered the imperial study, but no one has seen the ice crystal flower. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but purse her lips. She was a little anxious. Even with Yiling Feng's connections, he couldn't find it. Wouldn't it be even harder for outsiders like them? Xiao Su sensed her uneasiness and gently stroked her head. Don't worry. Let nature take its course. Chu Qingyin knew that there was no other way but to wait. Cheng Yinluo and the others were already used to the interaction between the two, but in Yiling Feng's eyes, it was like a red rain falling from the sky. Was this still the cold, heartless, and unapproachable Xiao Su that he knew? It seemed that he had to reevaluate this Chu Qingyin. What was so special about her that Xiao Su treated her differently? Chu Qingyin inadvertently raised her eyes and saw a certain someone who had always been elegant, looking like he had seen a ghost. It was a little comical. Huo Ling and the others shook their heads. If young master, he saw her a few more times a day, he would probably get used to it. Thus, everyone began to eat. At this time, Yiling Feng turned to Cheng Yinluo and politely said, "Miss Cheng, try this autumn maple leaf. It's slightly spicy and has a very crisp texture." "All right, thank you, young mastery." Cheng Yinluo smiled and put a piece in her mouth. The taste was really good. She nodded at Yiling Feng. Seeing this, Kong Ling's eyes dimmed. He lowered his head and drank the wine in his cup. "Miss Cheng, don't call me young mastery. It's too formal. You could just call me Ling Feng. Can I also call you Yinluo?" Yiling Feng said with a smile. Chu Qingyin choked on her soup. Wasn't this flirting a little too fast? Just as Yiling Feng was waiting for Cheng Yinluo's response, a delicate voice sounded through the door. "Yiling Feng, you bastard. How dare you flirt with other women with your back facing me?" Chapter 388. As soon as she said that, Chu Qingyin clearly saw the gentle smile on Yiling Feng's face twitch unnaturally. "Oh no, she found me again." At this moment, Cheng Yinluo heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, she was willing to talk to Yiling Feng only because she wanted to annoy Murong-ju. Even without him, she still had suitors. However, when she saw his indifferent expression, she had already given up on that thought. She felt that there was no need to change herself just because of a fit of pique. As soon as his voice fell, the door of the private room opened, and a beautiful young girl wearing a rose-colored long dress walked out. She had a crystal necklace with rose petals on her forehead. Her appearance was sweet, fresh, and refined, like a fairy from the jade pool who had accidentally entered the mortal world. At first sight, Chu Qingyin couldn't help but exclaim in her heart, "What a little fairy!" However, this little fairy seemed to be in a bad mood. Her brows were raised, and her grape-like eyes swept across the crowd. Finally, her gaze fell on Yiling Feng, who had been trying to reduce his presence. Then, she strode over angrily. Chu Qingyin's seat just happened to be close to Yiling Feng. Seeing that she was about to settle scores, she immediately moved aside to make space for her. Just when everyone thought that a big fight was about to break out, the rose-like young girl walked up to Yiling Feng. Suddenly, she blinked her eyes, and tears of innocence and grievance filled her big eyes. She pursed her lips and said, "Ling Feng, why are you always avoiding me? From Yangchang to here, wherever I chased you, you immediately disappeared. If I didn't see you here today, I think I would have lost you again." Everyone's jaws dropped in shock. Didn't she say that she wanted to catch the adulterer and settle scores? Something didn't seem right. Yiling Feng seemed to have gotten used to the other party's way of speaking. The unnatural expression on his face quickly disappeared. He greeted her politely. "So, it's Miss Dugu. I didn't expect to meet you in such a remote place. What a coincidence." "What coincidence? This lady followed you here. Don't tell me you don't know." The rose-like young girl glared at him indignantly. Her previous gentleness was swept away, and she said hatefully. Upon hearing his words, she knew that he wanted to cut ties with her again. Yiling Feng still had a courteous smile on his handsome face. "Miss Dugu, you're still an unmarried lady. It's best if you don't say such things. It will ruin your reputation." Chu Qingyin blinked. This man had just been flirting with Yen Luo. How did he turn into an upright gentleman in front of this little girl in the blink of an eye? Could it be that this person had two faces? As Chu Qingyin ate, she enjoyed the free show that she was watching. Lady Rosa Multiflora reacted as if she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. She frowned and swept her gaze across the table. Finally, her gaze landed on Cheng Yinluo. She pointed at her and said angrily to Yiling Feng, "These are all your excuses. You were still shamelessly trying to curry favor with this lady. Don't think that I didn't hear you. Yiling Feng, you womanizer." Cheng Yinluo was called out, but her face was calm. She thought that this little girl's words were quite amusing. It didn't matter if he was exposed, but if he was humiliated in front of his good friend, no matter how magnanimous he was, he wouldn't be able to keep his face. Yiling Feng put away his smile and said in a serious voice, "Miss Dugu, please don't talk nonsense. This is a rumor." Lady Rosa Multiflora ignored his change in expression and turned to Chu Qingyan. Little brother, we've talked for so long. I'm dying of thirst. Help me pour a cup of tea. Chu Qingyan was amused. This little girl was quite cute. It seemed that this was going to be a long battle. She immediately poured a cup of tea and handed it to the girl. She even instructed, drink slowly. There's no rush. Take your time and settle the score. When Yiling Feng heard this, he cast a reproachful look at Xiao Su. It's fine if you don't persuade her, but why are you fanning the flames? Xiao Su glanced back at him. You call this fanning the flames? You're the one who caused this peach blossom death. You should settle it yourself. You're lucky that the little guy didn't make trouble for you. Sure enough, he's a master who protects his own. Yiling Feng hatefully said in his heart. Lady Rosa Multiflora took the tea and drank it in one gulp. It was obvious that she was really thirsty, but she didn't hesitate. She raised her sleeve to wipe the water from the corner of her mouth, and then continued to speak to Yiling Feng with righteous indignation. I don't care. Anyway, you promised me that you would take care of me for a lifetime. You actually abandoned me. Where did the etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame that you studied go? Yiling Feng held his forehead. If he had known that she was like this, he wouldn't have provoked her in the first place. It was as if he had dug a hole for himself and accidentally buried himself in it. Chu Qingyan felt that to be able to make such a wanderer reveal such a distressed look, this girl's skill was really admirable. She saw her eyes rolling around the whole table of food. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but find it funny and said to her, Sister Dugu, you haven't eaten yet, right? Take a rest first. If there's anything, we can talk about it later. First, eat with us. Once she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan asked for another pair of chopsticks and bowls to be prepared. Young Lady Rose did not reject the offer. She smiled innocently at Chu Qingyan and said, All right, then I won't stand on ceremony. As soon as the chopsticks and bowls were served, the little girl unceremoniously started to eat. Although she was very hungry, her behavior was gentle and polite. Chu Qingyan felt that although she spoke lively and cheerful when she was quiet, she gave people a completely opposite feeling. Her every move was elegant and natural. Chu Qingyan felt that even a big family might not be able to raise such a girl. Your little brother is really cute. This girl is very fond of you. My name is Dugu Qing. What's your name? Dugu Qing, who was half full, asked her with a smile. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. My name is Chu Qingyan. I'm very happy to meet you, Sister Dugu. She felt that this Dugu Qing should be 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance was likable, her personality was cheerful, and her speech was not like those girls in ancient times. Instead, she had the air of a big family, so she also felt close to her. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she casually introduced the people at the table. Yiling Feng originally wanted to send her away after she finished eating, but he didn't expect her to chat and laugh with everyone, so he swallowed his words. Dugu Qing wasn't afraid of strangers. After getting familiar with everyone, she looked at Cheng Yinluo seriously and said earnestly, Sister Yinluo, Ling Feng is a womanizer. Don't be fooled by him. 10 days ago, he cheated a girl from a pastry shop. 5 days ago, he cheated a girl from a rouge shop. 3 days ago, he hit on a young lady from an official's family. He's really a womanizer. Don't be fooled by him. Hey, Yiling Feng, why are you grabbing me? Before she could finish speaking, Yiling Feng grabbed her wrist and dragged her to the door. Before he left, he said to everyone, I have some private matters to attend to. I'll be back in a while. Everyone, please forgive me. Chu Qingyan listened to the shouting from near and far. She was puzzled and asked the person beside her, Why does your good friend sound like a womanizer? Does he specialize in deceiving innocent girls? Xiao Su's hand that was holding the cup paused. He said faintly, That's why you should stay away from him. Oh, if Yiling Feng heard his good friend's words, he would probably bleed. His reputation would be ruined for no reason. Chapter 389. After the meal, Yiling Feng also came back. His face was still as radiant as when they first met, but she could faintly feel that something was different. However, Chu Qingyan didn't ask too much. After all, They had only known each other for the first time, and it would be too much to poke her nose into his business. What happened just now was just a small episode, and it would pass just like that. I've already booked rooms for you in this restaurant. Rest for the night, and I'll take you to the capital of Jiang Kingdom tomorrow. It's at least 3 to 5 days' journey from here to the capital, so it's better to conserve your energy. After Yi Feng finished speaking, someone came in to lead everyone to their rooms. Before leaving, Chu Qingyan still asked curiously, "Where's Miss Dugu? Why don't I see her?" Yi Feng replied with a smile. "She probably went back. Don't worry, she's not child." Chu Qingyan nodded and left with Xining and Jean Xin. At this time, everyone had already dispersed, and only Xiao Su and him were left in the private room. Only then did Yi Feng remove the gentle smile on his face. His face was pale as he looked at his good friend indignantly. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't been tripped up in Junlan, and I hadn't been forced to stay for a few more days, she wouldn't have caught up with me. Didn't you see her blabbering just now? She ruined my gentleman image." "Gentleman image? Do you have that?" Xiao Su's tone was full of suspicion. Yi Feng snorted. Who in Jiang Kingdom doesn't know that the Yi family's young master is gentle and elegant? He treats people modestly, is handsome, and has elegant manners. Who would have thought that he would be defeated by this little girl? If I could go back to that afternoon, I wouldn't have been fooled by her appearance. I would have treated her to a meal and saved her once. Otherwise, why would I be avoiding her like I'm avoiding a debt? I can only say that you deserve it. After so many years, you still can't change your nature. Isn't there a saying that goes, after playing with an eagle all your life, you were pecked blind by an eagle in the end? I think you reap what you sow. Back then, when he was a playboy, she had warned him. Unfortunately, he still did as he pleased. Today, he finally received his retribution. Hearing his good friend gloating instead of comforting him, Yi Feng felt extremely frustrated. "You also know that I don't have any big ambitions. Can't I live a carefree life? Anyway, I don't have any objections. You can do whatever you want." Xiao Su acted as if he had nothing to do with it. Yi Feng rubbed his nose. He had been playing with women for so many years, and he had always been able to escape unscathed. Unfortunately, this time, he was tightly entangled. He was not as tenacious as a woman. She had been following him from the capital of Jiang Kingdom until now. It had been at least 2 or 3 months. He really did not know whether this Duguqing was stupid or naive. He was just playing around, but she took it seriously. Whenever he thought of her, he would have a headache, so he simply stopped thinking about it. "Forget it. Let's not talk about my matters anymore. You, on the other hand, how did you get yourself into this situation?" Although he had seen the whole story in the letter, it was not as real as what the person involved said. Xiao Su's eyes curved, and there was a bit of ridicule in his eyes. "It's just getting rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. What's there to talk about?" "Ah, this is the first time I've seen you so unabashedly evaluate your imperial father. In the past, when we talked about this, you were always cold as if someone owed you millions of silver taels. Now, you finally figured it out yourself?" Yi Feng seized the opportunity to counterattack. Who asked him to laugh at him just now? Xiao Su didn't care about his good friend's attitude. His eyes were indifferent. "It's just that I've gotten over it. The world is too big, and people are just a drop in the ocean. I thought I could shoulder a lot, but later I found out I was just overestimating my own abilities." Every time he talked about himself, he always had an indifferent look, but he placed too much importance on Sichuan. For example, responsibility, filial piety, loyalty. But when he heard him talk about it now, Yi Feng felt that he had changed a lot. He was no longer so stubborn and cared so much. Yi Feng wondered what he had experienced after not seeing him for a few years. Or who had changed him. He and Feng, he had tried every means to help him get out of that quagmire, but he was indifferent. In the end, they could only give up. But after so many years, he was no longer the King of England who was only satisfied with the Liang family, and the world. Who could have the ability to change him? Yi Feng felt very curious. He really wanted to meet this person. He felt that this person must be an amazing person. If possible, he wanted to ask for advice. Unfortunately, Ling Feng did not know that this person was so far away, but so close. Xiao Su, you've changed a lot. If the face-changing mask on your face was the same as it was a few years ago, I would think that someone had secretly swapped your soul. Ling Feng joked. Oh, then do you want me to tell you a few embarrassing things from a few years ago, so that we can compare them? Xiao Su knew that he was joking with him, so he asked without any politeness. Ahem, ahem. Ling Feng covered his mouth with his fan and laughed. You're such a person who can't take a joke. Look at Feng. Although she's cold and cheerless, she can tell a cold joke easily. You two are birds of a feather. Xiao Su commented without holding back. In a courtyard far away in a town near the river, a handsome and slender man couldn't help but sneeze. Then he narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of Jiang country. It must be those two people who were teasing him behind his back. He really made bad friends by mistake. Ling Feng shrugged indifferently. He had heard these words more than a dozen times, but after not seeing them for so many years, he still missed these words. That's right. How long can the poison in your body last? Ling Feng thought of business, and his expression became serious. Less than 50 days. He did not calculate the time carefully, but there was a little fellow beside him who was very persistent about this matter. Every day that passed, she would cross out a number, so he did not have to remember. It seems that time is really tight. Ling Feng's peach blossom eyes narrowed slightly, a touch of worry flashing through his eyes. Then he pretended to be relaxed and said, Don't worry. It's not said that good people don't live long, but evil people live 1,000 years. You're a demon from hell. Your hands are stained with the blood of so many people. Outsiders say that you're a demon who kills without blinking an eye. You won't die so young. Ling Feng reached out to pat his shoulder to comfort him, but he dodged. Ling Feng couldn't help but take back his hand. Why was this person's obsession with cleanliness still so strong? It wasn't cute at all. Then I'll be indebted to your auspicious words. He knew that his good friend was truly concerned about him, so he didn't argue with him. Then how are you going to explain to Sichuan country? Are you going to hide for the rest of your life? Ling Feng asked curiously. When that arrow fell, there would be no king of England, Xiao Su, in this world. Xiao Su held the teacup and frowned. Ling Feng was stunned for a moment. Chapter 390. When Xiao Su said, There is no king of England, Xiao Su, in this world, Ling Feng felt that there was something wrong with his ears. That was why he was hallucinating. Xiao Su, you're not joking, right? Ling Feng still couldn't believe it. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at him coldly. Do I look like the kind of person who would joke? His face was full of disdain. Ling Feng felt that he was going to scratch the wall. This explosive news was too much for him to bear. It wasn't because of Xiao Su's words, but because of his change. He still remembered that year when Xiao Su wanted to return to the capital to report on his work. He and Feng, he had advised him that if it was really an abyss of suffering over there, then he should leave. The world was big, and he could make it his home. But how did this guy reply to them? It was still vivid in his mind. A man's ambition is to travel far, and he should put the country first. A real man should put the responsibility on his shoulders first. At that time, this sentence blocked the two of them so much that they couldn't say a word. But today, damn, he actually went back on his words. What happened to him after not seeing him for a few years? But you weren't at that time? He couldn't help but ask. Knowing the shock in his friend's heart, Xiao Su's face was calm. I've done all the responsibilities that I should do. Why can't I have some free days? Do I have to become a machine that works nonstop? This was what the little guy had said to him when he was analyzing his subordinate's corruption case all night. Although he didn't have any special impression of it at that time, when his friend asked, this sentence appeared in his mind. Ling Feng shook his head with a look of disbelief. Changed. You've changed. You're no longer the cold-faced lord who talks about filial piety and etiquette. But it was good that he had changed. At least the current him was what they wanted to see. Don't tell me I'm still the same as you. Every time you see me, there are always a few confidants chasing after you. Xiao Su knew what he was thinking, but he didn't show any mercy. He knew that his good friend was thick-skinned and invulnerable. Ling Feng, who had been stabbed in the back for no reason, was not as tough as he claimed to be. Ling Feng, who had hit the nail on the head, could not help but wail in his heart. He complained, "Xiao Su, you bastard, you become bad, you become bad. In the past, you couldn't even make a fart with a stick. Now, you've actually learned how to trick people. Watch your words. I don't mind letting your close female friends know that you're here." Xiao Su glanced at him. Damn it, too evil, too evil. Yiling Feng snorted in his heart. What are your plans for the future? Yiling Feng took a sip of wine and asked, "If everything goes well, then I'll just raise my child and play with him. That's how I'll spend my life." Xiao Su's expression was indifferent, but there was a faint light in his eyes. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Yiling Feng's mouth twitched. "The child you're talking about can't be your little wife, right? Is there anyone else?" Xiao Su asked in return. His tone seemed to be saying that he had asked an idiotic question again. "You're treating him like a child? Really?" Yiling Feng really wanted to ask, "Have you considered the feelings of your child?" Unfortunately, he swallowed his words in the end. "You have a problem with that?" He looked like he had nothing to do with him. I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare." Yiling Feng immediately lowered his head and drank. He, Xiao Su, and Feng Yi were the same age. Xiao Su and Feng Yi were about the same age, while he was younger by a year. However, Xiao Su's personality was calm, and he had the authority of a big brother, so if he said anything, he would not resist most of the time. For example, right now, when he was being bullied, because they had to go out tomorrow, Xiao Su left first, leaving Yiling Feng drinking alone. "I have to tell Feng Yi, that brat, that Xiao Su has become bad. No, I can't tell him. I have to let him experience the feeling of being stabbed. After all, good friends should share blessings and misfortunes together." Yiling Feng, who looked hurt just now, had already recovered his elegant and flirtatious appearance. However, the corners of his mouth revealed a mischievous smile. Back in the room, Xiao Su found the person lying on his table asleep. However, she was not in a deep sleep. When she heard the door close, she woke up. "Big Ice Cube, you're back?" Chu Qingyan rubbed her eyes. Looking at the person slowly approaching, she asked in a soft voice, "And why don't you sleep in your room?" There was a heater in the room. The moment he entered, he took off his cloak. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already walked up on her own accord. She took his cloak and hung it on the hanger at the side. She shrugged and looked a little depressed. "I just arrived in Jiang country today and heard that there was no news of the ice crystal flower. I just asked Ling, and they still can't find the love grass. I feel uneasy." Being uneasy was actually conservative. In her heart, she was afraid. No matter how much she had mentally prepared herself in the past, she had always told herself that as long as she came to Jiang country, there would be hope for Big Ice Cube's illness. This belief made her persist from Sichuan to Junlan, and then to Jiang country. But when that belief reached its destination, it seemed to have lost its strength. It never gathered in her heart again. Little Chu Qingyan's strange expression did not escape Xiao Su's eyes. He walked to the couch in the middle of the room. His left hand rested on the arrow sleeve of his right hand. He pulled it up slightly and said to her with a calm expression, "Qingyan, come here." He rarely called her name. When she suddenly heard him call her, Chu Qingyan subconsciously paused. Then she obediently walked over and sat down in the direction he pointed. She knew that he had something to say to her. She closed her mouth, but she was still a little depressed. "Qingyan, how many more days until the poison takes effect?" he asked. 45 days, she answered. She remembered the time perfectly. Every time a day passed, she felt as if something had been taken away from her heart. She cherished it very much. "I remember you once said that as long as there's a glimmer of hope, you won't give up so easily, right?" At this moment, Xiao Su was no longer the cold-faced and selfless king standing on the podium. Instead, he was someone who had put down all his airs and used all his gentleness to speak to the person in front of him. She did not answer. Instead, she nodded. She knew what he wanted to say, but she still felt sad. "There are only 40 days left. We still have time. What are you worried about?" Xiao Su's lips curved into a rare smile in front of her. It was extremely comforting. Perhaps she was encouraged by his smile, but Chu Qingyan mumbled, "That's right. We still have more than a month's time. Thinking about it, I don't feel so bad anymore." He raised his hand and placed it on her head. His gaze was deep and his voice was extremely gentle. Yes, and I don't intend to give up. After working so hard for so many years, how can I die young without enjoying it? I haven't seen you grow up yet. How can I bear to leave? Chu Qingyan did not know when it started, but he had poured all his gentleness into her. And he did not know either. Everything was just following his heart. Chapter 391. Hearing the big ice cube's words, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little ashamed. I'm sorry. He was the one who was suffering from mental and physical torture. What she had to do was to make him relax and give him positive energy. In the end, she would always pester him and ask him to comfort her. Chu Qingyan wrung her hands together with a bitter expression on her face. You've already done a great job. Xiao Su pulled her into his arms and lowered his voice a lot. Whether it was facing those sneak attacks in Xixian, or her steadiness in the medical center, or her calmness in the princess's residence, or her attentiveness on the ship, in his eyes, she had already done very well beyond his imagination. A 10-year-old child could do what an adult could not do. Her mental strength was enough to make people have a whole new level of respect for her. Chu Qingyan buried her face in his clothes and blushed slightly. It was the big ice cube who praised her so straightforwardly. He should not be comforting her. It should not be, it should not be. She repeated the important thing 3 times in her heart. After the two of them waited quietly in the room for a while, Chu Qingyan went back to wash up and rest. From tomorrow onwards, they would really start fighting in the Jiang country. It was a dreamless night until dawn. There was breakfast in the restaurant. Chu Qingyan woke up early and brought Xining downstairs to eat. The moment Chu Qingyan sat down, she saw the Rose girl sitting not far away, Duguqing. She could not help but raise her eyebrows. According to Yiling Feng's words, didn't Duguqing leave long ago? Why was she still here? And her eyes were looking at the stairs, as if she was waiting for someone. Chu Qingyan understood. Although it was her first time meeting Yiling Feng, she felt that he was a good person except for being a little dissolute. But it seemed a little inappropriate for him to be the object of her affection. She did not want to interfere at first, but she felt that Duguqing's temper was quite to her taste. She could not help but smile and wave at her. Sister Dugu, have you eaten breakfast? If you haven't, we can share the table if you don't mind. If not for Chu Qingyan's words, Duguqing, who only paid attention to Yiling Feng, would not have noticed her presence. Little Qingyan, why are you here? The enthusiastic Duguqing came over and asked, when did you come down? Why didn't I see you? Chu Qingyan complained in her heart. Did she look so insignificant? And what kind of name was this? She realized that she had many nicknames now. Duguqing giggled. I love all sweet food, and I won't reject any delicious food. Chu Qingyan nodded in understanding. She called the waiter and ordered bean buns, glutinous rice balls, white rice porridge, dried salted vegetables, egg custard, and sugar-fried chestnuts. After ordering a round, Duguqing blinked and looked at her as if she saw a new world. Little Qingyan, if I didn't see your face, I would think that you're the same age as me. You don't have the naivety of your age. It had to be said that Yiling Feng and Duguqing had a keen insight into her age. It was no wonder that the two of them were entangled. But was this naivety really a compliment? Didn't they say that heroes come from the young? It's normal. Chu Qingyan acted cute. Duguqing nodded. The new generation excels the old. I understand. While they were talking, the waiter had already served all the dishes they ordered. Thus, the two of them began to enjoy the hot breakfast. So sweet, so sweet. It's delicious. Duguqing was very satisfied. She squinted her eyes and ate happily with a bean bun in one hand and a sugar-fried chestnut in the other. Chu Qingyan drank the porridge and looked at the person who was tasting the breakfast with a curious expression. She was deep in thought. This Duguqing ate very elegantly. Even though she was holding food in both hands and her eyes were sparkling, it didn't affect her temperament. It was as if something was deeply ingrained in her and wouldn't be affected by 1 or 2 actions that were out of line. She was no more than 15 or 16 years old. When she smiled, she looked innocent. But when she looked at people seriously, she faintly exuded a noble aura. Her gestures were also elegant. Chu Qingyin was a little curious about her identity. Could it be that she was a young miss from an official's family who ran away? But she didn't have a servant girl by her side. It didn't make sense. Chu Qingyin asked casually, "Which part of the Jiang kingdom is Lady Dugu from? Why did you come out alone? Aren't you worried that your family won't be able to find you?" These words seemed to poke Dugu Qing's heart. Her hand suddenly paused, and her face slightly stiffened. But it was only for a moment before she returned to normal. She took a bite of the bean bun, like a satisfied cat, and slowly said, "I'm not from Jiang country. My family isn't here." With just these two sentences, he easily changed the topic. Chu Qingyin used the action of drinking the porridge to hide the surprise in her eyes. Don't be fooled by this little girl's innocent appearance. In fact, she was very good at changing her face. But she didn't feel any hostility or threat from her, so she was relieved. After eating, her stomach was full and her body was warm. Before the others came down, Chu Qingyin started to chat with her. "Have you known Yiling Feng for a long time?" Girls were all gossipy, and Chu Qingyin was no exception. When talking about Yiling Feng, Dugu Qing was a little indignant and a little shy. "We've known each other for at least 3 months." When talking about her acquaintance with Yiling Feng, Dugu Qing talked endlessly. The first time she met Yiling Feng was on the street. He politely struck up a conversation with her on the road and invited her to eat sugar-coated haws. When he heard that she was not from Jiang country, he enthusiastically took her around. At that time, Dugu Qing had just arrived at the capital of Jiang country and was unfamiliar with the place. When she saw that there was a free, handsome man as a tour guide, why not? A few days later, perhaps Yiling Feng couldn't stand her too active personality or knew that she was too simple, so he left her alone. Later, she looked for him everywhere, and unfortunately, she was targeted by a few bad guys. Yiling Feng happened to pass by and saved her. Then she continued to follow him. In the end, it evolved into one running and one chasing. But in Chu Qingyin's ears, she automatically summed it up as a story of a foodie girl being taken away by someone, and then the hero saving the beauty, and the beauty wanting to repay him with her body. Chu Qingyin felt that this Yiling Feng wasn't too bad. At least he didn't take advantage of the girl. But after hearing Chu Qingyin's heroic words, Chu Qingyin almost spat out a mouthful of water. "I think Yiling Feng looks very much like my husband, so I want to abduct him home." Chapter 392. Dugu Qing was immersed in her own beautiful fantasy and did not consider the damage her words would cause to the people around her. Cough, cough, so she was wrong. The ancient people's thinking was not as conservative as she thought, but rather so avant-garde. Then, if she took a fancy to a pleasing man on the street, she could go up to him and say, "Hey, you look like my next boyfriend. Why don't you come home with me?" If she said that, wouldn't she be frozen to death by the big ice cube? Cough, cough, is that so? Chu Qingyin could not help but cough lightly to hide the shock in her heart. That's right. If you like him, then fight for him. My father, cough, cough, my family members all say this. No matter how much you like him, if you don't fight for him, he still doesn't belong to you. Dugu Qing said matter-of-factly. Chu Qingyin felt that these words were right, but it did not seem appropriate to use them on a playboy. Just as she was about to speak, Dugu Qing spoke first. As the saying goes, if a man pursues a woman, there's a mountain between them. If a woman pursues a man, there's a layer of gauze between them. I believe that where there's a will, there's a way. Looking at her clenched fists, eager to try, Chu Qingyin felt that dreams were plentiful, but reality was bony. However, this was her choice, and she could not interfere. She only hoped that Yiling Feng would not go overboard and hurt such a brave girl. But for some things, the more you want it to go in the direction you want it to go, the more it will like to go in the opposite direction. The world was unpredictable just like that. Not long after, everyone went downstairs. Chu Qingyin still wanted to say something to her, but when she turned around, she did not see anyone. She saw Dugu Qing at the stairs with her hands clasped in front of her, looking virtuous as she said to the people who just came downstairs, "Big brother Ling Feng, Did you sleep well last night? I just ate breakfast here. I think the red bean bun and sugar-fried chestnuts are delicious. I recommend you. Yiling Feng drank too much last night and was still not in the right state. Suddenly, he heard this ghostly voice and immediately woke up in fright. He turned his head and saw a pair of sparkling eyes, as if they were demonstrating to him. He suddenly wanted to vomit blood. Could it be that his words yesterday were ignored by her? Why are you still here? Yiling Feng's tone was not very good. He had a bit of a temper when he woke up. No matter if it was his parents or anyone else, he had never given them any face. There was once an unwritten rule in the E-residence. The young master was easy to talk to at any time, but never provoke him when he had just woken up, because at that time, he would no longer be a charming young master with an air of immortality, but a demon. Perhaps she was startled by Yiling Feng's tone, but before she could answer, he had already walked past her. So fierce. Du Guqing muttered softly, but it's flavorful. I like it. When you like someone, no matter good or bad, they're all merits in your eyes. Soon, she came back to life and went to his side to watch him eat breakfast. Yiling Feng seemed to be used to her clinginess, but he was still angry about waking up, so he ate and ignored her. Xiao was a step later than Yiling Feng. When he came downstairs, Chu Qingyan had already ordered his usual food for him to eat. He could enjoy it as soon as he sat down. Father Chu impolitely snatched the steamed bun from his son-in-law's hand. Facing his daughter's speechlessness, he acted like it was natural. Because other people's things are better than mine, so the steamed bun in son-in-law's hand will definitely be more fragrant than mine. Everyone's acceptance of Father Chu's fallacy increased, but Yiling Feng looked at this scene with a bit of surprise. With Xiao Su's skills, a mere steamed bun shouldn't have slipped up so easily, right? Unless he didn't care at all. It can't be. This Father Chu was so stupid. Was he worth being treated like this? He remembered that in the past, Feng Yi and him wanting to steal things from Xiao Su's hands was seeking death. This Father Chu was not only alive, he could even properly enjoy his things. It really was strange. Huo Ling and the others glanced at Yiling Feng, who looked like he was struck by lightning. They were also abused like this in the past, so they got used to it. However, there was now another member of the abused army, so it was worth celebrating. Perhaps because of Du Guqing, Yiling Feng wasn't as enthusiastic towards Cheng Yanluo as when they first met. He was probably afraid that Du Guqing would say something without thinking and ruin his glorious image. However, it could also be because Yiling Feng saw that Cheng Yanluo wasn't as enthusiastic and shy as the other girls. Seeing that he was just a passerby, he didn't have the heart to provoke him. After everyone finished eating, they prepared to get on the carriage. Chu Qingyan walked out of the inn and saw two people standing to the side, Du Guqing and Yiling Feng. Big brother Ling Feng, aren't you going back to the capital? I'm going the same way. How about we go together? Du Guqing asked with a smile. Yiling Feng felt his temples ache. Go back the same way you came. We're in a hurry, so I'm afraid we can't take care of you. I'm not a rich young miss, so you don't have to worry. I can take care of myself. Du Guqing waved her hands. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. This Du Guqing was really cute. Couldn't she tell that she was rejecting him in a disguised way? However, her reply was good because she saw Yiling Feng's defeated expression. Everything had its vanquisher. Miss Dugu, do you want this young master to tell you directly that I can't bring you along? It's better to leave some leeway for us to meet again in the future. Yiling Feng felt that if he brought her along, he wouldn't have any peaceful days along the way. Therefore, he couldn't care less about his usual tender and protective nature. This Du Guqing was the most difficult woman he had ever met in his life. She was second to none. But I lost my maidservant, and my traveling expenses were stolen. I am alone and have no relatives. Are you really willing to leave me in such a terrible place? Tears quickly filled her eyes. A beauty full of tears, so delicate and pitiful that I couldn't help but feel pity for her. When Yiling Feng heard this, he sighed, Forget it. It's not like we can't go together, but you have to promise to stay at least 3 steps away from me. Du Guqing immediately nodded with tears in her eyes, looking very sincere. Yiling Feng then, went to arrange a carriage for her. When Dugaching walked in front of Chu Qingyin, she was stopped by her. "Did you lose all your things? I have some money here. You can keep it with you first." Chu Qingyin was about to let Xining take out her purse. Who knew that Dugaching would immediately stop her? She looked around and then whispered in Chu Qingyin's ear, "My family's servant girl was thrown away by me. I was the one who threw away the traveling expenses." "You?" Chu Qingyin looked at her in shock. Dugaching straightened her body and smiled slyly. "If I didn't do that, how would I be able to travel with you today? This is called you can't catch the wolf without risking the child." When Chu Qingyin heard this, she couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. But this saying "can't catch the wolf" seemed to be quite apartment. Ling Feng looked like a big bad wolf. She had a premonition that this Ling Feng would fall in the hands of this little fox in rabbit skin. She was really looking forward to it. Chapter 393. To be honest, Dugaching looked simple, but Chu Qingyin had a feeling that this little girl was not very simple. However, it was good that Ling Feng was troubled by this problem. At least, he would be more careful not to attract bees and butterflies during the journey. Yin Luo and Ethereal had been in a state of treating each other as air. Chu Qingyin concluded that they were in a cold war. Father and mother were very curious about everything in the Jiang country. They talked and laughed, and from time to time showed their affection in the carriage. At the beginning, Dugaching was still playing her part. Ling Feng relaxed, but soon she began to take action. Dugaching once told Chu Qingyin that this was called loosening the reins only to grasp them better. Let him relax his vigilance, and then launch an attack. Chu Qingyin thought that this plan was very good, but it seemed that it would not work. Dugaching, who had climbed into Ling Feng's carriage many times to get closer to him, was thrown off by him. The journey was difficult, but because of these small episodes, it became less boring. On this day, the group stopped to rest halfway. Chu Qingyin did not want to go out because it was too windy outside, so she pulled Xiao Su to play chess in the carriage. Xining boiled a pot of water and came to pour tea for them. "Master, do you know what happened today?" Xining asked excitedly while pouring tea. As soon as she heard the word "again," it meant that something happened between Dugaching and Ling Feng. Chu Qingyin was interested. Holding a chess piece, she smiled and said, "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me quickly." Xining put down the teapot and said impatiently, "When we set off this morning, Miss Dugu bought some pastries in the market for young Master Yi. But she did not know that young Master Yi was allergic to mango. Those pastries were mixed with mango powder. I heard that young Master Yi accidentally ate it and became allergic. Now Ethereal is treating him. Wasn't this too dramatic?" Chu Qingyin couldn't help but smile and shake her head. Dugaching was probably on the verge of tears. After Xining retreated, Chu Qingyin placed a chess piece, tilted her head, and asked, "Big Ice Cube, is young Master Yi always so, passionate to women outside?" Chu Qingyin originally wanted to use amorous remarks, but after thinking about it, this person was his good friend after all. It was better for her to save some face. When she paused, Xiao Su knew what she wanted to say. After he placed a piece, he said calmly, "He's carefree and bold, but he knows his limits. In short, his IQ isn't high, but his EQ isn't low." Chu Qingyin carefully pondered over his words and felt that Ling Feng had been belittled by his good friend. TSK, TSK, TSK. One was unapproachable, while the other was passionate. It was hard to imagine that these two people with completely different personalities could become friends. It was really amazing. However, at this moment, Chu Qingyin was attracted by the hands of the person in front of her. She was holding a white piece, while he was holding a black piece because she disliked the color black. But when the round black jewel was sandwiched between his slender middle finger and ring finger, it appeared so dark and cute. Perhaps it was because his hands were too beautiful. They were white, with distinct joints and light pink fingernails. They were like cherry blossoms falling on the fine white jade. They were so beautiful that they were not a pair of hands, but a work of art. But this pair of hands did not appear gentle, but instead gave people a kind of simple elegance. For example, at this moment, he was leisurely playing with the black piece between his fingers. Relying on the nimbleness of his fingers, the black piece appeared between his index finger and middle finger, and then between his ring finger and little finger. Her gaze couldn't help but follow those fingers up, sweeping over the back of the hand with blue veins, the wrist that was like a crescent moon, and then the sleeve that was tied around his wrist, completely covering the beautiful seam between his clothes. She didn't know why, but she felt a kind of elegant, holy, and ascetic aura. Thinking of this, she already didn't dare to look up. After waiting for a long time for her to place a piece, Xiao Su leaned against the wall of the carriage, looking at her with a leisurely expression. "You still want to regret your piece?" His voice was like jade colliding, deep and magnetic. Chu Qingyan was slightly startled and couldn't help but look up at him. Just sitting there casually, his expression was indifferent, but couldn't hide the elegance of his body, as well as the light in his eyes. Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of these words: elegant, carefree, and elegant. If it was before, these words would not be related to him at all. But after leaving the Sichuan, he was no longer so dull, and his eyebrows were no longer tightly knit. If he used to look like a 30-year-old man, he now looked like a 20-year-old man with the demeanor that a 20-year-old man should have. "Even if you see a flower on my face, I won't let you regret your piece." The deep and magnetic voice sounded again. Chu Qingyan quickly averted her gaze. How could she continue to stare at him like this? She secretly despised herself in her heart. Even if there was a beauty in front of her, she still had to sit still. "Who said I'm regretting my piece? I'll place it now." Chu Qingyan, who was rushing to get a piece, did not notice that she had just been seriously teased by the big ice block. When Chu Qingyan calmed her emotions and prepared to place a piece, she found that she had already lost the city gate. The white piece had suffered a crushing defeat. No wonder the big ice block had asked her if she was regretting her piece. She had no choice but to regret it now. Therefore, the people not far from the carriage heard the words coming from inside. "Give me a 5-step advantage. Not a single step. Give me a 4-step advantage. 3 steps. Good deal." Then, after a while, there was another conversation from inside. "If I had known, I would have played again. 3 steps can't bring the dead back to life. Even if I gave you a 10-step advantage, you still have no power to resist. How can I be as good at chess as you?" She humbly asked for advice. "Some things are innate. You can't change it. It's not as good as IQ." With his poisonous tongue, Qingyan lost. But this can be made up for later." "What the hell? Another military book. I won't read it." The people outside could vaguely imagine the scene of their young Wang Fei being bullied by their masters again. It was simply too vivid. Du Guqing inevitably heard the conversation between Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan outside. She was envious. If her family's Yifeng could also treat her like this, then she would be satisfied. After brewing the medicine, Du Guqing immediately brought in. This was her first time brewing medicine. It could be said that it hurt her brain. She knew how to play the zither, go, calligraphy, and painting, but she didn't know how to serve people. Yiling Feng, who was red all over because of his allergy, didn't notice who handed him medicine. He only wanted the allergy to disappear quickly so that it wouldn't affect his image as an elegant young master. Therefore, after receiving it, he put it in his mouth without looking. Du Guqing saw his actions, and her heart was filled with anticipation. She had just brewed this medicine and hadn't tasted it yet. She didn't know if it would have a soft taste. Unfortunately, reality was cruel. Uffed. Yiling Feng immediately spat out without caring about his image. Who could explain why this medicine was filled with dregs? When he saw that the person standing in front of him was Du Guqing, he felt like kneeling down. Damn it. Chapter 394. During dinner, they heard that Yiling Feng's illness had worsened. Not only was he allergic, but he also caught a cold. Chu Qingyan said worriedly to the person beside her, "Big ice cube, is it because we were in such a hurry that young Master Yi's body couldn't take it?" Xiao Su didn't stop picking up food. "It has nothing to do with being tired. Just focus on eating and ignore him." Chu Qingyan ate a mouthful of white rice. Big Ice Cube was still as cold as ever. However, she thought about it in her heart. Yiling Feng was sick, and that gave Dugu Qing a chance to take care of him and serve him. Chu Qingyan felt that she was being evil, but she believed that Dugu Qing, who was even more evil, would not let go of such a good opportunity. But when she was about to go out for a walk after dinner, she heard Xining's report. It turned out that Yiling Feng was not sick because of fatigue, but because of anger, and it was all thanks to the domineering Dugu Qing. Dugu Qing, who had never served anyone before, did not know how to boil medicine. The first time, she boiled the medicine into dregs. The second time, one of the herbs was missing. She did not know the importance of the herb, which made the allergy worse. Then she felt sorry and took out Yiling Feng's clothes to wash. Then Yiling Feng was miserable. In ancient times, there were no washing machines or dehumidifiers. How could winter clothes dry easily? So when he finished bathing and wanted to change his clothes, he found that the small box was empty except for a note saying, "I was wrong. I atoned for my sins. I will wash your clothes clean." Oh my God, are you sent by heaven to punish me? Yiling Feng covered his eyes. He had never seen such an idiotic woman. So young Master Yi, who had no clothes to wear, caught a cold wrapped in the quilt. At that time, Ethereal saw his sick appearance and sighed. "Young Master Yi, when I saw you a few years ago, you were strong and strong. Why is your body so weak now?" Could it be that his body was really hollowed out by beauty? Yiling Feng read the meaning in Ethereal's eyes and closed his eyes immediately. "Dugu Qing, when we reach the capital, I will send you away." He was a man of his word. After Chu Qingyan finished listening to the story, she began to piece it together in her mind. It was a youthful idol drama about a silly girl chasing after an unlucky guy. Because they were about to reach the capital of the Jiang Kingdom, they could feel that the closer they were to the capital, the more solemn the towns were. The patrolling soldiers at the checkpoints were also more formal. As the heart of the country, it should be more protected. Therefore, they slowed down their pace, worried that they would attract attention. On this day, they stopped in a town closest to the imperial capital. It had to be said that this Yiling Feng was truly a rich second generation. Because almost every place they stayed was a courtyard of Yiling Feng's family, and this time was no exception. Yiling Feng and Big Ice Cube went to the study to discuss something while Chu Qingyan strolled alone in the yard. Although the weather in Jiang country was so cold that it made people shiver, she had been practicing martial arts diligently recently. Her body was much more resistant to the cold than before. Chu Qingyan stood in the yard for a while, then turned around and saw Dugu Qing. She greeted, "Sister Dugu, where are you going?" Hearing someone call her, Dugu Qing stopped in her tracks. She carefully protected the plate in her hands and turned sideways. Seeing that it was Chu Qingyan, her eyes curved into crescents. "So, little Qingyan, what are you doing here?" "Just taking a walk." Chu Qingyan walked over and saw the plate that she treated like a treasure. She couldn't help but be curious. "What are you holding in your hands?" Dugu Qing followed her gaze and looked at the plate in her hands. Chu Qingyan didn't know if she had seen wrongly, but she actually saw a trace of shyness flash across Dugu Qing's face. "These are the pastries I made for Big Brother Ling Feng. I heard that he is in the study now, so I took them to make afternoon tea for him." Dugu Qing held the plate and smiled sweetly. Chu Qingyan smiled. Dugu Qing was indeed a little girl in love. The word sweet was overflowing in her words. But when she saw Dugu Qing's figure disappear in the corridor, Xining walked to her side. She looked a little embarrassed. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You want to put out the fire? How did you end up in such a sorry state?" Xining's face was mournful. "Mistress, this servant just came back from the kitchen. Miss Dugu had just burned down the kitchen. This servant also helped everyone put out the fire." Chu Qingyan didn't think that she would hit the nail on the head. She blinked and admired in her heart. This Dugu Qing was indeed powerful, very powerful. "Go change your clothes. Also, call Jean Xian over. I have something to ask him." Chu Qingyan patted Xining's shoulder and let her go back. Xining complied. Looking at her body covered in dust, she wanted to cry, but had no tears. She only wanted to make a bowl of lotus seed soup for her mistress. Why was she so unlucky? Chu Qingyan watched Xining leave with a pensive look in her eyes. She had to quickly improve her martial arts. Perhaps it would be useful in Jiang country. Her intuition had always been very accurate. Old brother, my mother is urging me to give birth to a big fat son for her again. Yiling Feng's face was very dejected. He should have been a handsome young man like Panin, but now his face was swollen with small pink bumps because of allergies. His very handsome appearance had been ruined. If it was in the past, he would definitely attract the attention of women. Unfortunately, with his current appearance and a 9-foot-tall man sitting in front of him, Xiao Su, he didn't even notice his grievances. It's normal for Andy to have such considerations. You're already 18. Xiao Su casually replied. Not only did his good friend not comfort him, he even hit him when he was down. Yiling Feng put away his emotions and wanted to open his folding fan. However, when he touched his waist, it was empty. He then remembered Ethereal's warning that he shouldn't be exposed to wind these few days. Otherwise, it would be detrimental to his condition. He couldn't help but sigh. So what if I'm 18? Isn't it better to be free and unfettered like this? It's time for you to restrain yourself, Xiao Su suggested. He had heard the little fellow's evaluation of Yiling Feng before. Affectionate people were actually heartless. Heartless people were actually affectionate. And fickle people were truly fickle in love. He thought that Yiling Feng wasn't hopeless. You think you're so great because you have a fiancé? Yiling Feng immediately glared at the person in front of him. Didn't you and Feng ignore me in the past? Also, you said that women were boring and couldn't compare to your military books and weapons. Why have you changed your mind now? Today is different from the past. If you want to complain about these things today, I think you should go back first. Xiao Su stood up and smoothed out the wrinkles on his clothes. Then, ignoring the calls of the people behind him, he calmly walked out. Yiling Feng clenched his fists and cursed in his heart. Back then, you were as indifferent as water and foam. You didn't touch women. I played with flowers. I didn't expect that after so many years, you would change your mind. Luckily, I had Feng Yi to accompany me. You think you're so great because you have a fiancé? After cursing in his heart, Yiling Feng suddenly smiled slyly. Little fellow, I have a way to make things difficult for you. Just as Yiling Feng was gleefully scheming, a curse came to hasten his death. Knock knock, is Big Brother Ling Feng here? Yiling Feng suddenly wanted to play dead. Chapter 395. Big Brother Ling Feng? Du Guqing called a few times outside the door, but did not hear a response. She wondered if something had happened to him. Her heart panicked, and she kicked the study door. At this time, Yiling Feng did not want to pay attention to it, but thinking that it would be ungentlemanly, he got up and prepared to open the door. Thus, Du Guqing's kick was unlucky, but also very coincidental. Yiling Feng did not know that waiting for him was a flying kick. He was unguarded, and his body came into close contact with the ground. He held his waist, fiercely looking at the girl who did not know what to do. One allergy, one typhoid, one waist injury. Did he commit a sin in his previous life? Or did he have 8 lifetimes of bad luck to meet her disaster? I was wrong. Du Guqing quickly helped him up. She was about to cry. How could she know that Big Brother Ling Feng would be standing behind the door? Her kick was not light. Yiling Feng wanted to avoid her hand and stand up himself, but found that his injury was more serious than he thought. When he sat on the chair, his face was dark. Why are you looking for me? At this time, there was no longer any gentlemanly demeanor. He got injured for nothing. Let that demeanor go to hell. Du Guqing knew that she was in the wrong. She twisted her fingers and suddenly remembered her pastries. She immediately put the plate in front of him and said flatteringly, Big Brother Ling Feng, I'm here to give you pastries. I consulted the pastry chef in the manor and finished it after an entire afternoon. Quickly try it. Yiling Feng impatiently waved his hand. At this time, his waist was hurting so much that he wanted to kill someone. His tone was not any better. You don't have to do these things anymore. Just let the servants do it. Du Guqing did not hear the displeasure in his voice, but continued with a smile. I'm very happy to be able to do something for you. Saying this, she opened the lid. Yiling Feng felt very helpless. This person did not understand. Some things should be stopped at a certain point, just like him and those girls before. But Yiling Feng forgot that those girls he met before were also shrewd. Even if they were not experts in the field of love, they were still experienced in it. Both sides just took what they needed. But the one in front of him was the first girl he provoked who did not know the ways of the world. She did not want anything just to stay by his side. Unlike those girls in the past who wanted his money and status. Why did it become like this? I clearly cut them into pieces. Du Guqing wanted to take out a piece and pass it to him, but when she saw the clumps of sticky rice cakes on the plate, she didn't know where to start. Didn't you check before you came? The corners of Yiling Feng's eyes twitched. It was his first time seeing such an ugly pastry. It was simply unbearable to look at. I brought it over as soon as it was done. I wanted you to be the first to see it. No matter how thick-skinned she was, she still felt how shameful it was to display such terrible culinary skills in front of her sweetheart. Yiling Feng felt that he was already hopeless. He wanted to take the opportunity to mock her a few more times to make her give up, but for some reason, his gaze fell on her hand that was tightly holding the plate. He remembered that 3 months ago, that pair of fair and clean little hands were very cute and chubby. Now, they were covered with all kinds of scratches and a few of her fingers were swollen like carrots. The displeasure in his heart disappeared in an instant and was replaced by a thick and complicated feeling and helplessness. There's a blue medicine bottle in the third compartment. Bring it over. Yiling Feng ordered her. Du Guqing still hadn't recovered from her shame when she heard his command. She subconsciously walked over. When a medicine bottle was brought back, she reacted. Do you want to apply medicine? She thought back to how he bumped into it not lightly. Yiling Feng took the bottle from her hand and said, Stretch out your hand. Du Guqing was a little stunned, but seeing him so serious, she subconsciously stretched out her hand. Her sleeves were a little long. Yiling Feng held her hand and rolled up her sleeves. Without rolling them up, he didn't know that there were a few long scratches on the back of her hand. On her fair skin, it was especially conspicuous. He was used to seeing women's slender, smooth, and gentle beauty. But this was the first time he held a pair of hands that could be said to be pig trotters and carefully observed them. He felt a little funny, but also a little sympathetic. When his fingers rested on her wrist, Du Guqing's fingers trembled. First, it was because of the pain. Second, it was because she had exposed her ugly side in front of her sweetheart. She wanted to withdraw her hand, but he held it firmly. Fortunately, he had avoided those wounds. Otherwise, it would have been one disaster after another for her. She was about to open her mouth to ask him to let go when she heard him ask, Why are there so many wounds? After asking, he took out a sweat towel and carefully wiped the ashes on her fingers. He didn't raise his head to look at her. Du Guqing wasn't that nervous. She said indifferently, Because I'm a little stupid and haven't come into contact with decocting medicine, washing clothes, or making pastries. So I hurt myself, but I was going to go to Miss Cheng's place today to apply some ointment. You don't have to worry. Those scratches, needless to say, were caused by her helping him decocting medicine last time and making pastries this time. The frostbite should have been caused by her foolishly carrying those clothes to wash. He had seen so many women. Which one of them didn't treat their hands and face like treasures? They would be extremely worried about the slightest scar. But she didn't care at all. Yiling Feng didn't know if he should say that she was careless or that she was magnanimous. But he didn't ask her to do these things. But she did suffer these wounds for him. Yiling Feng felt a little complicated in his heart. He didn't say anything else. He poured out the ointment and carefully helped her apply it. Actually, which woman didn't want to be beautiful? Du Guqing also cared a lot about her hands and her skin. In the past, when she was in the palace, even the slightest bump would make Imperial Mother very worried. Not to mention now, she could imagine that when Imperial Mother saw her hands, she would faint from fright. But what was done was done. She had also been injured. It would be unreasonable to be sad. But when the cold ointment was applied to her slightly itchy wounds, she suddenly felt that these wounds really came at the right time. Right now, he was sitting while she was standing. As long as she lowered her head, she could see his slightly closed, slender eyelashes and that high nose. She also did the same. A banded gentleman liked to compare notes. These 8 words were simply tailor-made for him. Have you seen enough? She subconsciously replied, "Not yet." Once the words came out, she closed her mouth. How did a person with his head lowered know that she was looking at him? Did he have eyes on the top of his head? Yiling Feng ignored her words. He closed the bottle and instructed, "Don't let it touch water for the next 2 or 3 days." "How can it not touch water? I still want to cook for you," Dugu Qing said a little anxiously. "There's no need to cook." Yiling Feng looked at the sticky rice cakes and said through gritted teeth. He had already been tormented enough in this period of time. He didn't want his organs to be injured again. "Then what else can I do?" she said in a small voice. "There is," he said in a low voice. "What?" She jumped for joy. "Help me call Ethereal over." His waist was hurting more and more. Chapter 396. Thus, on this day, a rumor spread like wildfire in the E family's courtyard. Lady Dugu had given a plate of pastries to their young master, and for some reason, their young master was injured. Lord Ethereal was then called in for treatment. Word spread from mouth to mouth, and the rumor grew bigger and bigger until it got out of hand. In the end, Lady Dugu had personally made a plate of pastries for their young master. Their young master was touched, and the two of them had sex in the study. In the end, Lady Dugu was too aggressive and injured their young master's waist. Thus, they hurriedly called in Lord Ethereal to the study for treatment. From this, it could be seen that the ancient people's imagination and ability to tell stories were comparable to modern people's ability to gossip. However, the servants who had helped put out the fire were filled with admiration for their young master. To be able to arouse their young master's interest in pastries like that, they had to admit that their young master's taste was truly strange. When Yiling Feng heard the rumor, his waist hurt even more. Lady Dugu felt wronged. How could she possibly force herself on him? But if there was a chance in the future, she did not mind giving it a try. Yiling Feng did not know what the young lady was plotting. He only felt that there was a sinister wind blowing behind his back. Back to that afternoon. After Xiao Su left Yiling Feng's study, he returned to his room but did not see Chu Qingyan. The courtyard was only so big. Where could she have gone? At this moment, Xining, who had just changed her clothes, passed by and was summoned into the room by Xiao Su. When she found out that her mistress was fighting with Jean Xian in the courtyard, her interest was piqued. She stood up and walked towards the courtyard. Before she got close, she heard the sound of swords clashing. He slowly walked to the side of a large tree, one hand behind his back and the other bent in front of him. His gaze fell on the two people fighting in front of him. Chu Qingyan turned around and stabbed her sword towards Jean Xian's lower body. She then sat down with her legs spread apart. Jean Xian leaped up, and his long sword drew a sword flower, as if there were dozens of swords rushing towards her. She didn't panic at all. She slapped the ground with one palm and jumped up. She held her sword in front of her body. When his long sword was in front of her, she slashed it fiercely. Jean Xian didn't expect her to give up defense and choose to attack. His eyes flashed with appreciation. But in the end, Chu Qingyan still lost because she didn't have enough internal energy. Chu Qingyan wiped the sweat off her forehead and said to Jean Xian, "Your swordsmanship has improved a lot." Jean Xian's gaze swept past her and looked at the person behind her. He said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "It's all thanks to your Highness' guidance." Only then did she realize that there was someone standing behind her. Following Jean Xian's gaze, she was a little surprised. "You and young master, you have finished talking about business?" She didn't even think about it and walked towards him. At this time, Jean Xian nodded in his direction and left. He's been bored out of his mind recently. There's no business, Xiao Su said indifferently. He didn't have the slightest awareness that he had hurt his good friend. Chu Qingyan nodded. This Yiling Feng was indeed quite unreliable, but she also seemed to have discovered something. In the past, he would only use one word to reply and never two. Now he finally gave up this bad habit and learned to explain things to others. This was the most correct way to communicate. But Chu Qingyan didn't know that only she could enjoy this kind of communication. "I think so too. Young master, he doesn't need to take care of the family business." After being together for so long, she didn't seem to see Yiling Feng worrying about business. He has a weakness. He's lazy, but that could be considered strength. Xiao Su seemed to be in the mood to chat today and said to her leisurely, "I'd like to hear more." She sheathed her sword and walked to his side to lean against the tree trunk. He doesn't want to be tied down by business all the time. So he spent a year searching for accounting experts and management talents. Then, he found them and made the best use of them. Now, he doesn't need to interfere with the Yi family business anymore. Xiao Su's words carried a hint of lament. She didn't know if he was lamenting his good friend's laziness or the way he solved the problem. So, he just needs to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, then continue to play with the flowers? Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. So, one could be lazy to such an extent. Something like that. Xiao Su didn't deny it. But isn't he afraid that if he does this, these people will have bad intentions and collude to steal all his family's wealth? She couldn't be blamed for thinking ill of others. The world was big, and there were all sorts of strange things, but the human heart was the most unpredictable. Xiao Su smiled. He may be lazy, but he's not stupid. If you can think of it, so can he. He has his own unique way of handling people. Don't worry. Chu Qingyan nodded. At this moment, Ethereal walked past in a hurry. She couldn't help but call out to him. "Ethereal, where are you going in such a hurry?" "Master, young master, it's like this. Miss Dugu came over just now and asked me to treat Master Yi's injury. I'm going to make some medicine for Master Yi now." Ethereal saw that it was his two masters and immediately walked over to report. "What happened to Master Yi?" Chu Qingyan was surprised. Ethereal shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that Master Yi injured his waist." When Xiao Su heard this, he waved his hand and dismissed him. "Go and make the medicine for him first." "Yes." Ethereal left in a hurry. "Big Ice Cube, I saw Lady Dugu bringing a plate of pastries to young Master Yi just now. How did she become like this all of a sudden?" Chu Qingyan counted with her fingers. "Allergies, typhoid, and a waist injury. TSK, TSK, TSK. This Lady Dugu is really young Master Yi's nemesis. Having an enemy is better than him fooling around outside." Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. He seemed to be quite satisfied with Dugu Qing's appearance. If Yi Lingfeng knew that his good friend used fooling around to sum up his carefree life of hunting women, he would probably vomit blood. Chu Qingyan was full of admiration for Dugu Qing. She was probably the only person in the world who could torment her sweetheart to such an extent. "Show me your heaven and earth sword," Xiao Su said. When she was sparring with Jin Xin, he saw the flaws in her sword moves. He might as well teach her a few moves today. Chu Qingyan, who was in a daze, unsheathed her sword when she heard him. She walked to the middle of the courtyard and bowed to him. "I have embarrassed myself by waving my sword in front of Master Guan." She needed to grow, but growth was not blind. She needed someone to light her up and show her the way. And this person was right in front of her. Xiao Su's lips curled into a smile. His eyes were filled with the image of her dancing moves. Here, sand and pebbles were flying and fallen leaves were falling. There was singing and dancing, and it was very lively. A person stood by the window, looking at the people coming and going in the imperial capital. He raised his eyes. Why haven't they arrived yet? Chapter 397. If Chu Qingyan heard the hoarse and lazy voice, she would definitely find it familiar. "Young master, according to the news from our spies, Xiao Su's group disappeared when they arrived at the capital of Junlan. Now, they're nowhere to be found." Xuanqi Zimo reported from his side. This group of people had suddenly disappeared from under their noses. Because of Xiao Lai's strength, they didn't dare to get too close. But because of this, they lost track of them in a moment of carelessness. Oh, the dark purple figure slowly turned around, holding a glass of wine with his fingers. His expression was lazy, but his pair of phoenix eyes were extremely seductive. "It has been more than a month. They should be here soon. It's just that I don't know where they are hiding now. It's really a headache." "Young master, it's my incompetence." Xuanqi Zimo blamed himself. "This has nothing to do with your incompetence. I heard that the Emperor of Junlan has some connections with Xiao Su. Maybe he was invited as a guest. It's just that they don't have a strong relationship. But to be able to hold him back for so long, he's quite capable." Higashio Motetsu shook the wine in his hand and watched the ripples spin nonstop, forming a small vortex. His eyes were deep and light, and it was unknown what he meant. Hearing his young master mention Junlon, Xuanqi Zimo quickly searched his mind for the recent news about Junlon. After straightening it out, he said, "Speaking of Junlon, I have to mention the recent destruction of the 4 vassals." "Let's hear it." Higashio Motetsu was a little bored, so he wanted to listen to these interesting palace stories to pass the time. Originally, when the new emperor of Junlon inherited the throne, he had a headache because of the 4 vassals who were eyeing him covetously. And when the 4 vassals were planning to seize the throne, the situation suddenly reversed. 2 of the vassals fought among themselves, one surrendered, and the other committed suicide. Everything was a little unexpected, but soon the new emperor killed decisively. He used this opportunity to find out the disloyal officials in the court. Using kindness and power, he quickly gathered this broken kingdom into his own hands. All of this happened in just 5 days, shocking the surrounding countries. Master Xuanqi's tone carried a hint of admiration as he recounted the information he had obtained. Higashio Motetsu's fingers paused. Decisive? A combination of kindness and authority? Act quickly? It was originally a plate of loose sand, but suddenly an invisible hand appeared and gathered them together. With a flip of his hand, he could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Apart from him, who else would have such courage? Higashio Motetsu curled his lips, and a charming smile appeared on his face. "Get ready, they're almost here." Xuanqi Zimo, who had just finished speaking, was suddenly given an order by his young master and felt confused. Weren't they talking about Junlon just now? Perhaps because he was in a good mood, Higashio Motetsu patiently explained to his not-so-smart subordinate. The new emperor of Junlon has just taken over the throne. He doesn't have enough experience to see the big picture and have the courage to kill decisively. There are only 2 possibilities for him to be able to set up a chain of plans in one go and catch the 4 vassals in one net within 5 days. First, he hid his strength and bided his time, waiting for this decisive attack. Second, he had the help of an expert behind him, and he caught the thieves off guard. Xuanqi Zimo was awakened by this and suddenly shouted, "It doesn't make sense that he hid his strength and bided his time. If the new emperor really had such ability, he wouldn't have waited until now to be besieged on all sides." Then, there's only the second possibility. When they were in internal strife, it happened to be when Xiao, Su, and the others disappeared. Then, the person standing behind the new emperor is most likely Xiao Su. Higashio Motetsu nodded with some satisfaction. His subordinate wasn't too stupid. That's right. Xiao Su's character won't be threatened by others. Perhaps he had a deal with the new emperor of Junlon. Since the internal strife is over, Xiao Su and the others should be arriving. Higashio Motetsu stroked the cup and raised his almond-shaped eyes, a smile flashing across his eyes. He wondered if the little girl was doing well after not seeing her for so long. Did she miss him? Xuanqi Zimo looked up and saw his young master drinking wine in a good mood. His mood also improved. He hoped that his young master could successfully obtain that item in the Jiang Kingdom. In another part of the Jiang Kingdom's imperial capital, a figure was sitting upright on a chair. Every corner of his dark gray monk robe was flat, without a single crease. The cold wind was raging outside, but he was sitting quietly in the room. Even the candle flame was burning quietly, as if it wasn't affected by the outside world. This was just a piece of pure land, quiet and peaceful. The sandalwood Buddhist prayer beads in his hand slid into his fingertips one by one as he recited the Buddha Sutra. Then, they returned to his fingers from another direction. His other hand was placed in front of his chest, palm facing right. If it weren't for his fingertips and lips moving, this person seemed to be standing still and aloof from the world. After he finished reciting the mystic Dharma Lotus Sutra, his closed eyes slowly opened, like a water lily that had been sleeping for many years, suddenly moving its petals and then blooming. His clean eyes were devoid of sorrow or joy, but they were filled with compassion for all living beings. He placed the prayer beads on the table and pinched his fingers as if he was calculating something. Finally, his lips curved slightly. She was already in the Jiang kingdom. He believed that she would arrive in the imperial capital soon. Su Jian's mind was filled with the image of the girl who had cunningly argued with him about Buddhism. She shouldn't have appeared in this world, but she did. Her uniqueness was destined to cause a bloody storm in the Sichuan kingdom. After he had foreseen the future, he had planned to stop her. He found that she was very spiritual and had the root of wisdom, so he thought of a way, which was to guide her into Buddhism. Perhaps his approach was too reckless, or it could be said that when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. She was suspicious of his intentions, so she was wary of him in the end. Later, her words reminded him that if the future could be predicted, then many things would be changed, because people tended to seek benefits and avoid harm. He didn't know what kind of impact his prediction would have on her and what kind of changes it would bring to the Sichuan. Life was unpredictable. He couldn't guarantee that his predictions were accurate. Now that the King of England had disappeared in the Sichuan kingdom, the situation in the Sichuan kingdom would change because of this. But he didn't try to predict what would happen next, because she said that fortune-telling was inaccurate, because fate couldn't be predicted. At this moment, a young monk knocked on the door and walked in. He bowed to Su Jian and then said respectfully, "Master Su Jian, our abbot said that there will be a Dharma conference tomorrow. He hopes that Master Su Jian can give a lecture to the benefactors who will come to listen to the Dharma, if you have time." "Young master," you can reply to the abbot, "I will be there tomorrow." Su Jian nodded politely. "Thank you, Master Su Jian. I will take my leave." The young monk retreated. "King of England, Benefactor Chu, I will wait for you here." Chapter 398. The next day, the group, who had rested for a while, was preparing to head to the capital of the Jiang Kingdom. However, they were informed that the capital would not be open to the public for the next 2 days, and citizens were forbidden from entering or leaving. Although Chu Qingyan and the others were surprised, they had no choice but to stay in the courtyard for 2 more days. Everyone who was about to leave sat in the main hall, drinking tea and discussing matters. Why is the city being sealed off all of a sudden? Chu Qingyan frowned. They had not received any news before, so it could be deduced that the city being sealed off was a last-minute decision. Yiling Feng was holding his waist, his face pale. It was obvious that he had not recovered from his injuries. When he heard Chu Qingyan's question, he shook his head. "I did not receive any news either, but I have sent someone to investigate. I believe there will be news soon. Something must have happened in the capital for the order to seal off the city. They want to capture someone." Xiao Su calmly picked up his teacup, as if he was not affected by the sudden change in the itinerary. Chu Qingyan nodded. The big ice cube had been in the dark for so many years, and his foresight was definitely higher than most people. He was able to point out the reason with just one sentence. The imperial capital was a place where people traveled to and fro. If such an order was suddenly given, the citizens would definitely panic. However, if the person who gave the order insisted on it, then something big must have happened in the imperial capital. At this moment, the Yi family servant who went out to investigate returned. "Young master, I heard that an assassin sneaked into the palace last night. The assassination failed, and now the assassin is hiding in the capital. His Majesty ordered the city to be sealed off to find the assassin." The news was no different from what Big Ice Cube had said. Chu Qingyan looked at Big Ice Cube with admiration. Coincidentally, he turned to look at her and accepted her praise without hesitation. "Did you find out who the assassin was?" Yiling Feng asked in a bad mood. They were about to enter the city, but this happened. Who knew how long they would be delayed? Just thinking about it made him unhappy. The servant shook his head. "I did not find out. His Majesty ordered the news to be sealed off. There are rumors that the assassin is a woman from the harem, but no one knows who it is." "A woman from the harem?" Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. This was probably not a baseless rumor. However, for the Jiang Kingdom's emperor to be so enraged, it was likely that this assassin had not only challenged his authority as an emperor, but that the target of the assassination was someone he cherished. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan sorted out the relationships of the royal family of the Jiang Kingdom in her mind. In fact, the royal family of the Jiang Kingdom, the Jiang Kingdom. In the Jiang Kingdom, the royal family took Jiang as their surname. The current emperor, Jiang Xiong, was as majestic as his name suggested. Before the Jiang Kingdom was handed over to him, the territory was very small, less than 1/3 of today's territory. He lived up to his name. He inherited the throne at the age of 15. That year, he began to lead the army and subdued the nomadic and disobedient tribes around him. There were some swamps and barren mountains at the border of the Jiang Kingdom, which had no value at all. However, he had a unique vision and included those places in his territory. It took him another 3 years to make the surrounding small countries submit to him and merge into the Jiang Kingdom. After the territory of the Jiang Kingdom reached his expectations, he withdrew the army and returned to the capital. Then, he worked hard to govern the country, selected capable people, and devoted all his energy to the construction of the country. The Jiang Kingdom gradually became prosperous. After decades, the Jiang Kingdom was no longer a small country that was so weak that everyone could bully it. It was a powerful country that could be on par with Junlan and Sichuan. Although this golden age of his was built with iron hooves, and his cruel and violent image had been deeply ingrained in the eyes of other kingdoms long ago, in the eyes of the people of Jiang Kingdom, he was the good emperor who brought them a peaceful and happy life. Speaking of this, one had to mention Jiang Xiong's good name. He doted on his wife, loved his son, and loved his daughter. In this era where men were superior to women, it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. However, this Jiang Xiong had always been the same. All the love in the harem was given to Empress Jiang Wang. It was said that this Empress Jiang Wang met Jiang Xiong when he led the army to war. Later, she followed him to expand the territory. It was said that this Empress Jiang Wang was an extraordinary woman. She did not lose to a man when leading the army to war. It was also said that this Empress Jiang Wang had a devastatingly beautiful face. This devastatingly beautiful Empress, Jiang Wang, gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter for Jiang Xiong. The eldest prince was 20 years old this year. He was the current crown prince, Jiang Yunli, the crown prince who was admired by thousands of people with both wisdom and beauty. The second prince was 19 years old this year. His name was Jiang Yunjing. He was cultured and refined. He liked to recite poems and write couplets. He was also good at making friends with scholars who shared similar interests. The third princess was 16 years old this year. It was said that Jiang Xiong loved his empress very much. Every time Empress Jiang Wang was pregnant, he would happily wait for the little princess to be born. He hoped that he could have a daughter like Empress Jiang Wang. Unfortunately, it was always a dragon child. He was quite sad. After waiting for 5 years, he finally got a phoenix girl. He doted on her in every way possible. It was as if he wanted to pour all the fatherly love that he could not give to her. He named her Empress Jiang Wang. It was said that this little princess did not disappoint Jiang Xiong's expectations. She was slender and elegant and had a gentle personality. She was a good princess that the people praised in their hearts. After Chu Qingyan sorted out the information she gathered from Hualing, she made a conclusion. A dedicated emperor who worked hard for his country married a beautiful empress. They gave birth to a smart and handsome crown prince, a cultured second prince, and a beautiful princess. In short, this family was very good. Chu Qingyan was quite satisfied with her conclusion. However, these 5 good members of the imperial family made Chu Qingyan unable to make a move. Because the imperial family was harmonious and the country had good weather, they did not need anything. Thus, there was nothing they could use. A headache was a headache. However, in this era, it was really rare to have such a dedicated and not promiscuous emperor, as well as a harmonious imperial family. If there was a chance, she wanted to meet this family of 5. They were actually able to make the people talk about them enthusiastically. They did not complain and resent the people in power like in other countries. It had to be said that the emperor of Jiang country really had a way of governing the country. At this time, Xiao Su's voice made Chu Qingyan pull back from her thoughts. Did you find out how long this lockdown will last? This was also what she was concerned about. She looked at the manservant and waited for his answer. The manservant replied, "This servant found out that regardless of whether the assassin is found within 2 days, the city will open and let them pass." This kind of news would not be spread among the people. However, the Yi family had connections and was not afraid that they would not be able to find out. However, the news of the assassination target was sealed by the Emperor of Jiang Country. However, the Emperor of Jiang Country did not know about it because there were only 3 women in the imperial palace: Empress Dowager Jiang, Empress Jiang, and Princess Jiang. She was thinking whether this assassination would be a breakthrough for them to find the ice crystal flower. Chapter 399. 2 days was not a long time, but to Chu Qingyan, it was like cutting a piece of meat. This was because the time they had left was slowly decreasing as time went by. She finally understood what it meant to pass by in a flash. Time was like sand between her fingers. Bit by bit, she could not hold on to it. But waiting was also torturous, especially in Jiang Country's capital, where even a bird could not fly in. Hualing could not even bring people into the city to gather information. On this day, Chu Qingyan was practicing her sword again, but for some reason, every move was not smooth. Instead, it was exhausting her mind. She stopped and looked at the sword in her hand. A sense of irritation filled her heart. At this time, a series of slow footsteps approached. Chu Qingyan heard the sound and looked up. It was Dugu Qing. Chu Qingyan put away the irritation in her heart and smiled. "Big Sister Dugu, why are you here?" Usually, at this time, shouldn't she be in the kitchen helping Yi Lingfeng boil medicine? Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan could not help but want to laugh. She heard from Xining that Dugu Qing had already burned 3 medicine furnaces. The servants in the kitchen were so scared that they all applied to the Yi family steward for a transfer. No matter if it was to wash the stables or sweep the leaves, it was fine as long as they were not in the kitchen. It could be seen that Dugu Qing's killing power was unparalleled. I finished boiling it 2 hours in advance today and already sent it over. But he has not woken up yet, so I went back to my room first. A gust of cold wind blew, blowing the long hair over her shoulders. She reached out and pushed the hair in front of her behind her ear. Because of this action, Chu Qingyan saw the wound on her hand. Although it was bandaged, it was still hard to not see the deep and shallow scratches. Chu Qingyan's eyes moved slightly. This young miss, who usually did not do any household chores, could do this for the man she liked. It was already very admirable, but it was a pity that she did not know if that man would be moved. "Little Qingyan, I was going to go back to my room, but I saw you practicing your sword here, so I came over." Dugu Qing did not notice her gaze on her hand as she leaned against the tree trunk behind her. She seemed to be sleepy as she asked in a daze. Seeing her sleepy look, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. "If you're tired, go back and rest. What are you doing here?" She brewed the medicine 2 hours earlier. It was only dawn today. It could be seen that she didn't sleep much last night. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but urge her to go back and catch up on sleep. "It's not too late to go back later. It's just that I saw that you were impatient, so I came over to chat with you." Dugu Qing smiled slightly. Her red lips parted slightly, and the wind blew her jade belt, while the sun shone on her pomegranate skirt. Cheng Yinluo's eyes were bright and kind. Her smile was bright and beautiful, but when she wasn't, she was cold and elegant. As for the Dugu Qing in front of him, she was the water spirit. She was extremely beautiful, and her eyes were filled with emotions. Chu Qingyan thought that if Cheng Yinluo was described as bright and beautiful, then Dugu Qing would be bright and beautiful. One had excellent medical skills, but a sharp tongue, but a soft heart, while the other was careless and stubborn because of love. If she were a man, she would definitely be subdued by these 2 extraordinary women. Unfortunately, she wasn't. You can tell that I'm in a bad mood. After Chu Qingyan came back to her senses, she was a little surprised when she heard what Dugu Qing said. Dugu Qing nodded honestly, then pointed at her face. "Because your thoughts are written all over your face." Chu Qingyan was a little embarrassed when she heard this. She didn't think that she would be so obvious. Before she could say anything, she heard Dugu Qing continue. Little Qingyan, my mother once told me that we can have emotions, but smart people are good at hiding their emotions. That's why they live for a long time. If a person doesn't know how to hide their feelings, then they won't live long. Little Qingyan, you're still young, but you have to learn to be a smart person. Chu Qingyan was stunned. She didn't expect Dugu Qing to say such words to her. They seemed to be careless, but they were actually very reasonable. However, she was even more surprised that these words came from the mouth of this seemingly unscrupulous and innocent little girl. Suddenly, her face was pinched and a pair of watery eyes magnified in front of her eyes. A voice as pleasant as a lark sounded in her ears. Little Qingyan, are you wondering why I suddenly said such words? Chu Qingyan snatched her face back from her hands. Although she was a little shocked, she didn't show it on her face. She raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, are you trying to say that you're just a little fox pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? You little girl, you're a little interesting. Dugu Qing touched the hairpin on her head, her expression still bright and lovely. But I'm not pretending to be a pig. That animal is too ugly and doesn't match my noble status. I should say that I'm now a cute rabbit. She had learned the word cute from Chu Qingyan. At this time, she felt that it was very suitable for the situation, so she used it. My mother said that one has to be smart, or else one will accidentally lose one's life. I see that your group isn't simple. In this world, people are fickle, scheming, and fighting for power is a very normal thing. But in order to live a long life, you have to be smart and muddle-headed. Listening to Dugu Qing's earnest teachings, Chu Qingyan would be lying if she said that she wasn't surprised. Because if it was an ordinary young lady, she wouldn't say such words. Ordinary young ladies only cared about women's arts. How would they understand these fights for power? She narrowed her eyes. Dare I ask, Big Sister Rabbit, how did you see that our group isn't simple? Dugu Qing yawned, but she was still patient. Because the person in front of her was Xiao Su's fiancé, and Xiao Su was Yi Lingfeng's good friend. After so many days, she could see that Yi Lingfeng respected this good friend of his. Then, if she could pull Chu Qingyan into her camp and let Chu Qingyan talk to Xiao Su, would Yi Lingfeng change his view of her and accept her? Although the feasibility of this plan wasn't very high, it was better to kill 3,000 innocents than to let one go. Dugu Qing suppressed the sleepiness in her body and said slowly, your family's servants are extraordinary. They're not ordinary guards. Perhaps even the nobles can't afford to hire such guards who can fight against 100 people. They're well-trained and have strict military discipline. They might be from the army. I'm not very knowledgeable, so I don't know which countries nobles are from. But I can be sure that you're not from Junlan, nor the Shang Kingdom, and definitely not from Jiang Kingdom. There was one point that she didn't mention. In fact, just by looking at Xiao Su's noble aura, she could tell that he wasn't from an ordinary family. Don't ask her why she was so sure. It was because she grew up in such an environment. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that this little fox in rabbit skin in front of her was really hiding something. It seemed that she had underestimated her previously. Then dare I ask, Big Sister Dugu, what advice do you have for us? She didn't believe that Dugu Qing suddenly said all this without a plan. Chapter 400. I don't dare to advise you. Dugu Qing waved her hand casually, then suddenly leaned close to Chu Qingyan with a faint smile on her face. Little Qingyan, can you do me a favor? Say it. Help me get it, no matter what. Chu Qingyan was taken aback by the sudden enlargement of her face. Could this elder sister not be so flustered? Her watery eyes flickered with evil intentions. This favor is very simple. Tell your fiancé to tell him to speak to Yi Lingfeng. Advise him not to be a womanizer outside, and then cherish the people in front of him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan leaned against the tree trunk even more leisurely, her eyes full of kindness, a sly smile flashing across her lips. She pretended to be surprised and said, how do you know about my relationship with the big ice cube? Dugu Qing raised her brows and smiled. Little Qingyan, Everyone has eyes and ears. You didn't deliberately hide it, so it's very easy to find out. Chu Qingyan nodded in understanding. But you forgot one thing. We haven't gotten married yet, so I can't do this pillow talk. She spread out her hands in distress, expressing her helplessness. Why are you such a blockhead? Don't be so formal when doing things. You could just indoctrinate him normally. Dugu Qing was exasperated at her failure to live up to her expectations and poked her forehead with her finger. Chu Qingyan cursed in her heart. She was just taking the opportunity to tease her, but she was caught by her to educate her. It seemed like she had really shot herself in the foot. She avoided her finger and said calmly, "It's not impossible, but you said to cherish the person in front of you. Where's the person in front of you?" Dugu Qing heard this and immediately retracted her naughty finger. She pinched her handkerchief with both hands and returned to her gentle and ladylike appearance. She blinked her eyes delicately. "Little Qingyan, I am." Chu Qingyan felt like she was going to vomit out last night's dinner. "Sister Dugu, don't you think that sometimes it's more useful to do it yourself than to have others help?" Although the two of them were just fooling around, she still believed that the relationship between a man and a woman depended on the efforts of both parties. If others interfered, it was very likely that it would be more of a hindrance than a help. If I could do it alone, I wouldn't have to lower myself to ask for your help. The lovely and moving person suddenly became delicate and pitiful. Her bright and beautiful smile became worried in the blink of an eye. Isn't Yi Feng known as the capital's most affectionate man? Why can't I move his heart after doing so much? Seeing that we can enter the imperial capital tomorrow, I'm afraid that once we enter the city, he will turn his back on me and abandon me in the blink of an eye. Chu Qingyan thought about their interactions along the way. It was indeed Dugu Qing who took the initiative and Yi Feng who accepted passively. Yi Feng's acceptance was probably due to his gentlemanly demeanor. However, Yi Feng remained indifferent towards such a great beauty throwing herself at him. This made Chu Qingyan have a whole new level of respect for him. However, Chu Qingyan didn't understand Yi Feng. He believed that he was very principled. He pursued women who moved his heart, but once he got his hands on them, after coaxing them, he would easily lose interest and move on to the next target. However, because he adhered to the principle of parting on good terms, those women who received his gold, silver, and jewelry were more reluctant to part with him than pestering endlessly like Dugu Qing. Do you want to change to another person? This kind of man might not be a good match. As a bystander, Chu Qingyan really felt that she was too tired. If she wanted to move an affectionate but heartless person, it would be impossible unless there was a red rain under the heavens. Because heartless people have no heart. Little Qingyan, do you think that liking someone is very simple? It's like buying things in a shop. If this one doesn't work, then change to another one. Dugu Qing slowly withdrew the smile on her lips. With a serious expression, she looked at Chu Qingyan's seemingly pitiful gaze. She slightly turned her head and missed that line of sight. She looked blankly at the dim clouds in the sky. This is the first time I've left home. The world is so big, I want to go out and see. If I stay in a corner, I will become a frog at the bottom of the well. Her voice paused, but I didn't expect to meet a man who is different from the ones I've been in contact with before. He is flirtatious but not vulgar. He is happy but not lustful. Poetry, music, chess, calligraphy, painting, astronomy, geography, eating, drinking, gambling, there's nothing he doesn't know. This kind of man, when he smiles, is the dazzling star in the night sky. But when he smiles, he doesn't smile. Her eyes slowly regained their vigor. She looked at Chu Qingyan, who was deep in thought because of her words. Although I know that he might not be a good match, I still want to try. Although it is silly to be a moth to a flame, but what if it can melt a cold heart? I don't have any good points, but I won't turn back until I hit the south wall. The smile on her lips slowly widened, but her voice was a little soft. In the past 15 years, I have never been willful. I want to see how far I can go if I am willful this time. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of sentence. In a person's life, there should be a journey that one can take as they wish, and a love that is willing to sacrifice oneself. And Dugu Qing's words just so happened to perfectly explain this sentence. Okay, I'll give it a try. Whether I can succeed or not depends on my luck. Chu Qingyin looked at her calmly. It's not bad to play the emotional card. Thank you, little Qingyin. A smile of success appeared on that bright face. Chu Qingyin's face darkened. It turned out that she had been tricked by her just now. By the way, little Qingyin, why are you going to Jiang country? Seeing little Qingyin's face change because of her words, Duguqing immediately changed the topic, wanting to gloss over it. However, Chu Qingyin didn't really want to bicker with her. After thinking about it, she felt that there was nothing to hide. We want to go to the imperial capital to look for the ice crystal flower. Ice crystal flower? Although the name is not bad, I have never heard of it. Duguqing shook her head. But why are you looking for the ice crystal flower? Chu Qingyin thought to herself. If you have heard of it, then it's not difficult. This ice crystal flower has probably been extinct for decades. The ice crystal flower is a kind of medicinal herb. We need it to refine medicine. Other than the ice crystal flower, we also need the love grass. The ice crystal flower is still okay. At least we have some clues. This love grass is really hard to find. Speaking until here, Chu Qingyin sighed. This was also the reason why she was in such a bad mood. And it's okay. As long as you work a little harder, you will find it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Just like how I relentlessly pursued Yi Lingfeng. Duguqing rubbed her eyes that were about to close and cheered her on. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but find it funny when she heard that. Her mood also relaxed a lot. However, not long after, Chu Qingyin recalled the conversation in the courtyard. That figure with light footsteps, who kept rubbing his eyes and yawning as he left, often appeared in front of her eyes. It turned out that she didn't lie to her. What she said was all true. However, when the person who hit the wall and turned around, there was no spirit in his smile. Tragedy was to destroy all the beautiful things in front of others. When Chu Qingyin drew her sword again and calmly prepared to perform another set of swordsmanship, she didn't hear the muttering of the person who kept yawning as he left. Love grass, what a familiar name. Oh, I'm so sleepy. I'm going to catch up on my sleep. Chapter 401. The weather was getting colder. This was Chu Qingyin's first winter in ancient times, but it was colder than any winter she had experienced before. It might snow in a few days, Cheng Yinluo murmured as she looked into the distance. Snow. Chu Qingyin caught on to these two words, and her interest was piqued. I have never seen snow in my entire life. Cheng Yinluo heard her energetic voice and pursed her lips into a smile. You little girl, you're already wrapped up like a bear. When it snows, you won't even want to go out. Besides, it'll be even colder when the snow melts. Can your little body withstand it? Chu Qingyin almost exploded when she heard her teasing. I'm not that weak. Recently, I've been practicing martial arts, and my body's ability to withstand the cold has improved a lot. This little wind and cold isn't a problem for me at all. Oh, then you. Cheng Yinluo deliberately stopped talking and looked her up and down. Chu Qingyin could clearly feel her malicious gaze. She lowered her head and looked at the 3 layers of clothes she was wearing. She was filled with grief and anger. She didn't stay any longer and turned to walk towards the culprit. I don't need to wear so much. I'm not afraid of the cold. She tugged at his sleeve and said with a sad face. Actually, even without Yinluo's reminder, she almost couldn't recognize herself when she saw the round person in the mirror. She really did look like a mini bear, and a chubby one at that. Is that so? The clear voice raised the last syllable with a hint of suspicion. Yes. She stiffened her neck and replied stubbornly. She thought that he would ignore her, but unexpectedly, when she raised her head to peek at him, a pair of ink-black eyes enlarged in front of her. Little girl, do you know why you don't feel cold? Why? Chu Qingyin stammered as she replied. The reason why people feel cold is because they wear too little clothes. The reason why you don't feel cold is because you wear enough clothes to withstand the cold. If you don't want to catch a cold again, then wear them obediently. Xiao Su's gaze swept across her somewhat dull eyes. He raised his hand and patted her head. Then, he straightened up and walked to a chair at the side to sit down. When Chu Qingyin came back to her senses, before she could respond, she heard a stifled laugh. Chu Qingyin turned around and glared at Cheng Yinluo. who was shaking with laughter. She only looked away when she saw that Chang Yinluo had left. However, when Chu Qingyin turned to look at the person in front of her, her mind was no longer on the question of whether to wear more or less clothes. Her eyes were fixed on him. Perhaps no one knew that the man who was so busy every day, who only cared about the people, the court, and the royal family, would one day be discussing the issue of winter clothes with a girl in an unfamiliar and inconspicuous place. It was a world of difference. No one would believe him if he said it out loud, but it was happening right in front of him, and no one except her would see such a domestic conversation. Chu Qingyin tilted her head and sized up the person in front of her. His eyes were calm, without the sharp and cold look he had when they first met more than half a year ago. It was as if his sharpness had been ground away by the tribulations again and again. Washed away like this, it was as if only a calm and leisurely air was left. But she knew that such a person, regardless of whether he had walked from the clouds to the quagmire, could not hide his luxuriousness. For some people, it was their looks that made people unable to forget them. For some people, it was their talent that made people unable to forget them. However, in this world, there was a kind of person who could ignore his looks and inner qualities. With just a glance, he would be unforgettable for no reason. This kind of person could only be encountered by chance. But such a person was right in front of her eyes. Pa! A drop of cold water fell on her face, waking her up with a start. Big ice cube, what are you doing? She wiped the water droplets off her face and said gloomily. He retracted his finger and said with amusement, I'm trying to wake you up. Don't be in a daze again. Chu Qingyin snorted and sat down beside him. Sister Yinluo took your pulse just now and said that the snake kiss poison has entered a dormant period. You shouldn't wake up before the time limit is up. But she said that you must not use your internal energy and must not have too many emotional fluctuations. Otherwise, you might not be able to suppress the poison. When it came to serious matters, she did not seem like an ignorant 10-year-old girl. She looked serious and serious, like an adult. Qingyan. Xiao Su did not respond to her. Instead, he called out softly. His tone seemed to be mixed with a trace of helplessness, amusement, and affection. What's wrong? She wanted to say something, but he interrupted her. It was as if her long, curly hair was stuck. She could only raise her head and ask. He suddenly stretched out his hand and gently touched her eyebrows with his plump index finger. It was no longer as cold as before. Instead, it was warm with the fragrance of ink as he stroked her eyebrows. Child, don't become an old woman in advance. She had said these words more than 7 or 8 times, but each time it seemed as if it was the first time she had been so serious and cautious. He saw the deep creases between her eyebrows and couldn't help but want to smooth them out. He wanted her to live a carefree and happy life, not a life of worry and fear. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it in the end. Chu Qingyin slapped his hand away and said angrily, You're complaining that I'm long-winded. Spit out. The word spit out meant annoyance. He knew that she always had these wonderful words in her words. Qingyin, let nature take its course. I'll fight for what I have to fight for. You don't have to put pressure on yourself. His eyes were bright and his smile was shallow. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see the smile lines at the corners of his eyes. You just have to be responsible for growing up healthily. Her angry cheeks immediately disappeared. She pursed her lips, but she didn't want to continue this topic. She felt that there was no end to this topic unless the ice crystal flower and the love grass were in front of her right now. I understand. Knowing that she didn't want to talk about this topic, Xiao Su was silent. Chu Qingyin scratched her head. Looking at the person who was suddenly covered with coldness, she suddenly thought of something to divert the big ice cube's attention. This morning, I met Duguqing in the courtyard. She asked me to give you some wind. What wind? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows, seeming to have guessed something. Of course it's about your romantic and elegant good friend. Chu Qingyin put her elbows on the table and her hands on her cheeks. She seemed to be in high spirits. Big ice cube. Can you tell Ling Feng to settle down? He's not young anymore. It's time to settle down. Don't think about those girls all day. If you let down a girl's good intentions, you'll be struck by lightning. You can also do a good deed. Let the world have one less heartless man and one more lover. Chu Qingyan used all her glib tongue, but the person in front of her didn't seem to be moved at all. I never meddle in other people's affairs. Xiao Su made her speechless. It seemed that she couldn't do what Duga Qing asked her to do, but she was a little depressed. Then why do you keep meddling in my affairs? His cold eyes swept over. Are you someone else? Chu Qingyan shook her head in disappointment. No, I'm not. Good girl. Chapter 402. When it rains, it pours. Just as everyone was packing their luggage and preparing to head to the capital, the weather was not on their side, and it began to rain heavily. The winter rain was bone-piercing cold. Chu Qingyan hugged the hand warmer and looked at the endless winter rain outside the window. She felt helpless. Miss Chu, come and sit. Don't stand at the door. The wind is strong. Yiling Feng ordered the servants to prepare hot tea and pastries. He felt like he was going to fight this rain to the death. She slowly walked over and sat beside Xiao Su. Her voice was filled with worry. I don't know how long this rain will last. Let's not delay. If the rain doesn't stop in 2 hours, we should still set off. Anyway, this place is not far from the capital. We should be able to arrive in the evening. With that, Yiling Feng ordered the servants to head to the capital to make arrangements. That's good too. Chu Qingyan nodded, but she accidentally glanced at Duga Qing, who was holding her cheeks with both hands. She couldn't help but shake her head with a smile. Clearly, Yiling Feng also noticed Duga Qing's gaze. His body stiffened before returning to normal. He chatted cheerfully with Xiao Su beside him. For some people, the more you respond to them, the more they jump. If you ignore them, they will stop thinking about you. However, Yiling Feng didn't understand Duga Qing. She was the kind of person who became braver the more she was defeated. The sound of the rain covered the voices of the young people in the room. If it wasn't for the anxiety in her heart, Chu Qingyan would feel that this kind of place, this kind of environment, actually gave people a feeling of peace and comfort. Little Feng, is your waist better? After Mr. Chu finished the pastries and tea, he turned to look at Yiling Feng, who was standing not too far away. Everyone couldn't help laughing because of Father Chu calling him Little Feng. They didn't know why, but after seeing Yiling Feng, Father Chu shifted the attention of White Impermanence, Black Impermanence, Hollow, Lil Yama, and Blockhead to him. Hualing and the others almost lit up fireworks to celebrate because of this. They were no longer fun in Father Chu's eyes. When Yiling Feng heard these 3 words, his eyes twitched. This Little Feng sounded no different from a little lunatic. He had no enmity with Father Chu, and he didn't think that his charm was enough to attract Father Chu's attention. Why did he keep pestering him along the way? It's almost healed. Yiling Feng gritted his teeth. Thanks to Father Chu's reminder, he remembered the humiliation of being kicked away a few days ago. What a painful realization. I don't think you're fully healed yet. Look at you, you're talking like a pregnant woman holding her waist. So, when we depart, let Dugu take care of you. Look, you didn't bring any maidservants to take care of you, and the courtyard is filled with manservants. They aren't as attentive as the maidservants. Father Chu rambled on. Yiling Feng felt as if a few crows were croaking above his head. He looked at Duga Qing's rosy cheeks and immediately wanted to refuse. Chu Machen's father turned to Xiao Su and said, Son-in-law, don't you agree with me? Xiao Su faintly nodded. Yiling Feng's eyes widened. He was betrayed by his brother, just like that. Thus, Father Chu beamed at Yiling Feng and said, Son-in-law also agrees. Little Feng, you have to thank Little Qing. She spared no effort to take care of you. Yiling Feng's smile stiffened on his face. He looked at Dugu Qing, who was smiling at him beautifully, and the corners of his eyes twitched again. Although this Father Chu was silly, the things he did were always inconceivable. He didn't forget that Hualing had described the ridiculous things that Father Chu had done along the way. However, this was only limited to outsiders. Those who were teased by him suffered unspeakably, like Ethereal and Cheng Yanluo. Thus, Yiling Feng could only swallow his anger. He didn't want to provoke such a troublesome character. If he really caught him off guard, his reputation would really be ruined. Thus, Yiling Feng tacitly agreed to Father Chu's suggestion. Chu Qingyan, who had witnessed all of this, didn't know what her father was up to. However, she could vaguely guess that her father was addicted to moonlighting and had already turned his target to Yiling Feng and Duguqing. However, Chu Qingyan also guessed that Duguqing might have taken the initiative to ask her father for help. Because Duguqing's mouth was sweet and often made Father and Mother Chu happy, Father Chu and Duguqing had established a deep revolutionary friendship along the way. Look, Duguqing even gave her father a thumbs up. Chu Qingyan could only smile and shake her head. However, she sincerely hoped that her father could help. After these few days of observation, if Yiling Feng could be more serious, he would be quite compatible with Duguqing. However, Yiling Feng didn't want to give up just like that. He originally didn't want to reveal his trump card, but Xiao Su's nod just now was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yiling Feng's lips curled into a sinister smile. Do you know that because of the assassination in the palace, the entire city is under martial law? From today onwards, you can only enter the imperial capital with a travel pass from your country. At this point, Yiling Feng deliberately paused and looked at Xiao Su. Brother Xiao, I remember that your travel pass was provided by Junzi Sheng, right? The travel pass from other countries has to be stamped at the relay station to confirm your identity. However, if you want to go to the relay station to verify your identity, it might be a waste of time. Thus, I found someone last night to get a new travel pass, so you don't need to go to the relay station anymore. Chu Qingyan nodded. She felt that Yiling Feng was very thorough in his work and wasn't as unreliable as he appeared to be. Many thanks for young Master Yi's help. Chu Qingyan smiled and thanked him. Xiao Su's hand that was holding the cup paused, and he looked at Yiling Feng suspiciously. Every time he smiled so slyly, it meant that the matter wasn't so simple. You're welcome. This is what this one should do. However, Yiling Feng looked at Xiao Su with some vexation. This travel pass, Yiling Feng's hesitation succeeded in whetting everyone's appetite. Is there a problem with this travel pass? Chu Qingyan put away the joy in her heart and asked with a puzzled expression. Yiling Feng snickered inside, but didn't show it on his face. His expression was troubled, because the imperial decree has just been issued and we are in a hurry to leave. It really isn't easy to match your identity. If you have something to say, say it. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and said. Yiling Feng glanced at him. Humph, I'll let you be smug for a while. Let's see if you can still be awe-inspiring later. AI, in your group there are children, adults, elders, and guards. I only have one travel pass that matches your identity. At this point, Yiling Feng purposely kept them in suspense. Everyone held their breaths and listened. Then he slowly said, that is a young miss from a merchant family bringing her parents and child husband to the imperial capital to play. It sounded quite normal. Wait. Child husband? What the hell was that? Chapter 403. Just like that, 2 hours passed, and the rain gradually became lighter. Finally, the sun pierced through the clouds and poured its light onto the earth, but the weather was still cold. Everyone had already gotten into the carriage and were preparing to head towards the Jiang country's capital. According to the plan, they would arrive at the capital in the afternoon. Everyone should have been excited, but on the way, everyone was in a state where they wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to laugh. Child husband? Their wise and powerful master had suddenly become the little princess consort's child husband? Ha, 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 ha. They were secretly laughing in their hearts. They were suffocating to death. The fire spirit would spirit, and the others were communicating with their eyes. Young Master Yi's move was too ruthless. Inside the carriage, filled with cold air, Chu Qingyan held the travel permit in her hand. She really wanted to laugh, but because of the dark-faced person next to her, she could only hold back her laughter and did not dare to laugh out loud. It had to be said that Yiling Feng had stepped on Big Ice Block's reverse scale. Big Ice Block, don't bring disaster to the fish in a moat. This has nothing to do with me. Chu Qingyan raised her hands and innocently said to Xiao Su, no matter how much the Big Ice Block spoiled her, he still had a male chauvinist mentality. How could he accept this kind of title? Child husband? That was someone who was raised at home from a young age to be the husband of his daughter. Xiao Su's expression was not happy. This Yiling Feng had injured his head and not his waist. He actually dared to play this trick on him. Big Ice Block, calm down. As the saying goes, a real man does not care about trifles. Don't take it to heart. Chu Qingyin could feel the ice-cold aura around him that could freeze people to death. She rolled her eyes and tried to persuade him. It was a pity that Xiao Su did not buy it. He closed his eyes and leaned against the couch, resting his mind. It was good to not care about trifles, but it was a big mistake to lose integrity. Although the little fellow had nothing to do with this matter, he still felt uncomfortable, so he simply did not want to see her. Chu Qingyin didn't know what he was thinking. Looking at his cold face, she scratched her head and suddenly blamed Yiling Feng. It turned out that this person came to drive a wedge between her and the ice cube. That's enough. Next time, don't let her catch him. Be careful that she won't let him off easily. Although she was angry, Chu Qingyin still knew what was important. The most important thing now was to comfort Big Ice Cube's hurt heart. A wounded heart? If Xiao Su knew about this, he would probably snort disdainfully. What a joke. Was such a small matter worth him getting hurt? Chu Qingyin kept the travel permit and leaned forward. She asked in a soft voice, Big Ice Cube, are you angry? No, Xiao Su replied casually without opening his eyes. His voice was hard, and it was obvious that he did not mean what he said. Chu Qingyin scratched her head. What was the Big Ice Cube angry about? Was it because he felt that being a child husband was a disgrace to him, the great lord? She didn't think much about it. She reached out and hugged his arm, pressing her body against his. Big Ice Cube, it's just an identity. Don't take it to heart. At most, I'll be your child bride, okay? Once a person became anxious and wanted to comfort someone, they would often say something unexpected, something that even they had not thought of. For example, Chu Qingyin at this time. Chu Qingyin was stunned when she said this. What the hell did she say? However, this sentence didn't seem to move Xiao Su at all. Instead, it made him open his eyes. His clear and cold eyes were like a cold winter breeze, somewhat cold. Haven't you always been my child? Xiao Su replied matter-of-factly. Chu Qingyin frowned. Could it be that Big Ice Cube had always treated her as his child bride? All right, don't think too much. Close your eyes and sleep. Xiao Su changed his position and reached out to pull the person in his arms into his embrace. He was just teasing her just now. He had never understood what kind of existence she was to him, but he had never thought of delving into it. Ever since that night of kneeling, he could only let nature take its course for many things. If she wanted to stay by his side, he would ensure that she was happy and healthy. If she wanted to leave, he would not force her to stay. He would protect her in the dark for the rest of her life. He never forced the people who were with him, nor did he treat them unfairly. The person beside her closed his eyes again, and his breathing gradually became long. Chu Qingyin listened to the strong heartbeat beside her ear, and she could not help but smile. Whether it was a child husband or a child bride, it was fine as long as she and Big Ice Cube were safe and sound. The person beside her gave her a feeling of peace that she had not experienced in the past 20 years. Just like now, she could let down her guard and sleep in his arms without worry. What kind of feeling was this? Sometimes she would think, it was not like friendship, but more like family. What else? What else? She did not think about it anymore, because she had no direction to think about. It was not Chu Qingyin's fault. In the 20 years of her life in the modern world, she was a scholarly generation with a strict upbringing. When she was supposed to have her first awakening of love in middle school, the elders in her family had held a late-night discussion with the main point that she was not allowed to fall in love early. In high school, her parents had high expectations, so she focused on her studies. When she went to university, she was surrounded by many outstanding men. But since middle school, she had always remembered the teachings of the adults and never touched that aspect. This caused her to form a habit and naturally avoided any kind of relationship with men. So even in ancient times, when she became dependent on Xiao Su and had other feelings, she did not know about it, because she had never thought about it that way. However, liking someone was an instinct. Sooner or later, the clouds would be parted and the sun would shine. It It was just a matter of time. When Chu Qingyan woke up from her sleep, she happened to arrive at the imperial capital's gate. It was noisy and noisy. 2 rows of guards armed with spears were facing each other, forming a passage. Everyone who wanted to enter or leave the city gate had to go through the guards' inspection. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Everyone got off the car to be inspected. This was not the first time they were inspected, so everyone was very calm. Chu Qingyan was now representing the head of the family. She led everyone to the table. Behind the table sat a guard wearing a blue official's uniform. He did not even raise his eyes as he said, "Guide." Chu Qingyan handed it over. The guard flipped it open as usual. However, when he saw the information inside, he immediately raised his head and glanced at Chu Qingyan before looking behind her. His eyes were filled with mockery as he said, "Identify each of you one by one. Once you confirm that there is no mistake, I will let you pass." Chu Qingyan felt that this guard was deliberately making things difficult for her. However, a strong dragon could not suppress a snake in its territory. She could only follow his orders. "This is my father, my mother, my family's maidservant, my family's servant, my family's child husband, Chu Qingyan pointed out the order in which they stood. Chu Qingyan did not miss that when she pointed at the big ice block and said the 3 words child husband. The onlookers roared with laughter. She frowned. The guard looked at Xiao Su, who was not good-looking, and the ridicule at the corner of his mouth deepened. "You are this young lady's child husband, Look at your physique. Of all things, you can be someone's child husband. Isn't this the behavior of coward?" As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan felt her entire body turn cold. "It's over." The big ice block was angry. Chapter 404. That square-faced guard did not feel the sudden drop in temperature. He looked at his subordinate beside him and looked at Xiao Su with disdain. He said in a voice full of disdain, "You have hands and feet, you can casually go out and make a living, but you're willing to stay under another girl and be a gigolo. You're simply a disgrace to the men of our Jiang country." The Jiang country's territory was personally established by the Jiang country's emperor. His deeds had affected many generations of people, to the point that the men of Jiang country all saw him as their role model. They worked hard to improve themselves and were unwilling to lower their heads. They felt that men should be ambitious, and at the very least, they should be indomitable and create their own world. So when they saw that a man of Jiang country was willing to be a child husband for someone else, it was simply a great humiliation. When that square-faced guard saw the information on the travel permit, his heart was filled with disdain. With every word that square-faced guard said, Chu Qingyan and the others felt the temperature around them drop. The mocking gazes and laughter all fell on Xiao Su. Huo Ling and the others had already reached their hands to their waists. As long as their master gave the order, they would not hesitate to kill to protect their master's dignity. What a joke! How could their master be a gigolo? When their master was killing enemies on the battlefield, these people were probably still wearing diapers and playing with mud. They actually dared to laugh at their most wise and powerful master. They were simply tired of living. As for Yi Feng, he was filled with regret at this moment. If he had not changed the travel permit to Jiang country's identity for a moment of pleasure, Xiao Su would not have suffered this humiliation. He looked at his good friend, whose face was so dark that it could sink into the ground. He knew that he could not cause a commotion right now. Otherwise, all their efforts would go down the drain. Just as that square-faced guard wanted to say something, Chu Qingyan raised her head and cut him off with a smile. "This officer, this is my family's child husband. When my family was in trouble, he reached out to save us. When he was wrongly accused, he never bent his back. He is indomitable and unyielding. In this girl's eyes, he is not someone who only knows how to eat. It is because of him that my family's business can flourish. He is not a gigolo. He is my family's man. Officer, please don't misunderstand." Chu Qingyan's words were spoken gently and without a hint of anger. It was precisely because of this that the square-faced guard listened to her. The mockery on the square-faced guard's face faded a lot. However, how could he take back what he had said? He turned to face Xiao Su, who was as dark as water. "A child husband is still a child husband. It's too unpleasant to hear. You'd better take care of yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, the square-faced guard met with Xiao Su's cold eyes. After experiencing the tempering of drinking blood on the battlefield, how could those eyes of his have the sharpness and killing intent that ordinary people could have? That square-faced guard was so frightened by this glance that he retreated a few steps. He only managed to stabilize his body with the support of his subordinates. When he looked at Xiao Su again, he had already shifted his gaze to the little girl. At this moment, the citizens who were stranded behind and wanted to enter the city started to shout impatiently. Only then did the square-faced guard stop pestering them and wave his hand impatiently to let them pass. Although Chu Qingyan did not like this snobbish guard, she had no choice but to lower her head in Jiang country. She took the travel pass and led everyone into the city. After the guard's line of sight, Lingfeng immediately walked up, looking like a little wife. "Brother Xiao, it's my fault. Are you all right?" After saying that, he looked at Xiao Su cautiously. At this moment, Xiao Su's lips were curled into a smile, but his eyes were icy cold. His gaze swept past Lingfeng. Lingfeng shuddered, feeling as if that gaze was cutting him into pieces. "Lingfeng, you're very good." His voice rose. It was a faint smile, so deep that it made people tremble. Lingfeng's shoulders drooped. It was over. He had stepped on his bottom line. After saying that, Xiao Su nimbly got into the carriage and ignored him. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Just as she was about to get into the carriage, Lingfeng pulled her sleeve. She turned her head and saw Lingfeng looking at her with a mournful expression. "Miss Chu, help me put in a good word. Don't make him angry. Otherwise, I will be very miserable." "Young master, you have to finish the path you chose even if you have to kneel down. You planted the seeds, and you have to bear the consequences even if you cry. I really can't do anything." Speaking of which, she really wanted to beat Lingfeng up. But he was Big Ice Cube's old friend, so it was not good for her to do it. In any case, he had to pay for what he did. After saying that, Chu Qingyan got into the carriage with a leap, leaving Lingfeng's face carefree. He had left in a state of withering and never coming back. This time, he had gone too far. "Big brother Lingfeng, don't worry. If you're afraid of revenge, we'll leave first. Moreover, they also need you now. They won't make a move on you so quickly. Don't worry." Duguqing walked up and comforted him. Lingfeng turned his head. It was like he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. "Are you serious?" "Of course it's real. It's more real than a pearl," Duguqing said seriously. Lingfeng immediately relaxed. This was the first time he felt that Duguqing was pleasing to the eye. Hearing the conversation outside the carriage, Chu Qingyan raised her brows. Offending Big Ice Cube, he wouldn't let him off so easily. She turned to look at the person beside her. At this time, Xiao Su no longer had the evil aura he had before. "Big Ice Cube, you don't have to care about what others say. Our identities are just a disguise." She knew that men placed great importance on their face, and the higher the status, the more important it was. Big Ice Cube had a high status in Sichuan Kingdom. Even if those people were scheming against him, no one could embarrass him in public, so she could only do her best to comfort him. "I know," Xiao Su calmly replied. Chu Qingyan nodded. Big Ice Cube was a very generous person. He wouldn't care about these small things. But she had underestimated a man's sense of righteousness. Hualing, Xiao Su spoke. "This subordinate is here." Hualing immediately appeared by the window. "Spread the news of Lingfeng's return," Xiao Su calmly said. Hearing this, Hualing revealed an excited expression. Lingfeng had stayed in the imperial capital for so many years and had provoked many women. Although Lingfeng had cleanly gotten rid of them, it didn't mean that these women thought the same way. One could imagine how many women would move once the news of him spread out. It really made people look forward to it. Also, you should know how to deal with that guard. Xiao Su continued. This subordinate understands. Hualing clenched his fists. He already couldn't take it anymore. Chu Qingyan sat on the side and watched her Big Ice Cube calmly give orders. He had dealt with 2 people without batting an eyelid. Fierce enough. Lingfeng, good luck to you. Chu Qingyan could already foresee what kind of disaster he was going to face when he returned this time. He could offend anyone, but offending her big ice cube was the same as digging his own grave. Chapter 405. The capital of Jiang Kingdom was as bustling and lively as she had imagined. The bustling crowd, the busy streets, and the row upon row of shops. The sun was about to set, and the dim yellow sunlight stretched the wine flags and signboards diagonally. Even the cold wind that blew carried the fragrance of the 5 grains. This was a country that was not inferior to Sichuan and Junlan. However, in Chu Qingyan's eyes, Jiang Kingdom was more peaceful than Sichuan and more stable than Junlan. This was because she could tell the current situation of this country from the expressions of the people. Chu Qingyan leaned against the window as the carriage moved forward slowly. The shops in front of her flashed past one by one. There were tea houses, restaurants, pawn shops, snack shops, and pastry shops. She looked at them one by one and did not pay much attention to those shops. She just wanted to remember this feeling. After dusk, the world was peaceful, and it made people unknowingly relax. Chu Qingyan decided to include Jiang Kingdom's capital as one of her must-visit tourist attractions. A thought flashed through her mind, and she couldn't help but turn her head. With a relaxed expression, she asked the person who was resting with his eyes closed, "Big Ice Cube, do you like a life of war or a life as plain as water?" She asked this question because she was influenced by the gatekeeper. That was why she was curious. Big Ice Cube had been leading troops for so many years in a difficult environment, but he was also free and unfettered. Hot-blooded men were not willing to be ordinary. She wanted to know, if he did not walk in a life of war in the future, would he be able to adapt to that plain and uneventful life? Hearing her question, Xiao slowly opened his eyes. His dark mirror-like eyes sparkled slightly, and they were even more beautiful than the gradually darkening sky. The light was not concentrated in his dark eyes, and it could be seen that he had fallen into deep thought because of Chu Qingyan's words. War of war, plain as water? His thin lips parted slightly, and his voice was faint, but it was not as cold as before. He frowned slightly, and the light in his eyes gathered slightly. He looked at the person who was leaning against the window and looking at him with her chin resting on her hand. "What kind of life do you want to live?" Chu Qingyan chuckled. Big Ice Cube probably didn't know what kind of life he liked, so he threw the question to her. However, she still thought about it seriously because she had never considered this question before. "I want to live a peaceful life. I want to be happy. I want to be exciting. I want to be free. I want to do whatever I want to do. Although I don't know what I want to do now, I think that as long as I'm willing, I will eventually find it. To stand up and walk, I need courage. To do what others don't dare to do, I need to be fearless. Perhaps my future choices will be different from others, but only by doing what I love can I achieve extraordinary results." Chu Qingyan thought as she spoke. She felt that her words were very messy. She said whatever came to her mind, but she knew that Big Ice Cube could understand her. "Very good." Xiao nodded. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what she said. The life she wanted sounded very simple, and there were no big ambitions, but he felt that it was very good. The simplest happiness was sometimes more difficult to achieve than those monstrous riches. Peace, joy, freedom, and excitement. There should be very few people in this world who would dare to admit that his current life could be like this. However, if he had the chance, he was willing to create such a life for her. At this time, Xiao was betrayed by his family and abandoned by his closest relatives. He didn't have much hope for those people in the Sichuan imperial city. Now, there was probably no one else who could be considered the closest to him except for this little fellow who had no blood relations with him. Therefore, he gave her all his love and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. It was because of this that the two of them were going around in circles until many years later. Every time they encountered the center of the vortex, they consciously avoided it. Only in the end, when their feelings intertwined and they couldn't control themselves, did they realize that they had fallen so deeply into the game. Only then did they realize that it wasn't overnight. "Ku, Could this was something that happened many years later? Let's return to reality for now. Chu Qingyan was a little dissatisfied. She had said so much, but the big ice block only said 2 words. Very good? He said that Yi Feng was very good before, but then he turned around and had Huo Ling spread news of his whereabouts. Then what did he mean when he said very good to her? Big ice block, do you like this kind of life? She thought about it and couldn't help asking. Although she had always been with him, she still couldn't see through the person she was with day and night. She always felt like there was a veil separating them. He could see what she was thinking, but she didn't feel anything for him. Sometimes she wondered if it was because their experiences were different, the things they experienced were different, and the people they grew up with were also different. He was patient and good at hiding his emotions. As for her, no matter how much she tried to hide her emotions, it would always be revealed. However, she also felt that her skills couldn't compare to the big ice block. He was a great general who had led 3 armies and fought against enemies. She knew she couldn't compare to him, but she unknowingly felt a strange desire for the big ice block. She didn't want him to hide anything from her. As she thought of this, Chu Qingyan was shocked by her own sudden thought. Was she possessed? Otherwise, why would she let her imagination run wild? Xiao did not notice a certain person's frown. He brushed the clothes on his knees, and his face was calm. When we finish our trip to Jiang country, I'll experience what kind of life you want with you. Because he also didn't know what kind of life he wanted to live. In the past, his path had been arranged, and he had been forced to walk it on his own initiative. This was the first time someone had asked him what kind of life he wanted to live. This was also the first time he had seriously thought about it, so he could still choose the path he wanted to walk. This kind of feeling was somewhat unfamiliar, but there was an indescribable curiosity and joy in his heart. Chu Qingyan, who was still immersed in her vexed mood, heard him say this, and a smile spread between her brows. She nodded heavily. Okay. The carriage had already slowly driven into the E residence. All the warm sunlight was shut outside the door. The sky suddenly turned dark. The lanterns were lit, and the night of the imperial capital slowly began. After entering the E residence, everyone was tired from running around. They didn't have the mood to appreciate the magnificent and beautiful scenery of the E residence and went to rest early under Yi Feng's arrangement. However, there were a few people who took advantage of the darkness to climb out of the E residence. One person ran through the streets, one ran to the restaurants, and one ran to the tea house. Hey, have you heard? E family's young master went out and returned to the residence. I saw E family's young master ride a carriage back to the residence today. That spirited and handsome appearance is still the same as before. E family's young master is back. Such words were said by one person and passed by another. Soon, everyone knew. Huo Ling and the rest had a carefree smile as they turned around and returned to the residence. Everything was carried out silently. Chapter 406. What? Fengling is back? A woman with white lips and teeth stopped, drawing her eyebrows. Her eyes shone with a green light, as if she was a starving wolf that had seen a piece of fat meat. You mean he's in the capital? Elsewhere, a beautiful woman in delicate clothes immediately pressed down the embroidered handkerchief in her hand, her eyes filled with shyness. Fengling is back. Quickly go and find out when he left. I want to have an unforgettable encounter with him. A woman with seductive eyes immediately ordered her personal maidservant. If you think there are only 3 of them, then you're underestimating Yi Feng's influence in the capital's women's circle. In any case, a large group of fat and thin women were rushing towards Yi Feng. Unfortunately, he was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the impending disaster. After a sleepless night, they slept well until dawn. Everyone gathered in the Yi residence's guest hall, enjoying the rare opportunity to not be on the move. The Yi family's elders were not in the residence. From what Yi Feng said to Chu Qingyan, the 2 elders of the Yi family, Yi Feng's parents, had gone out to play at the beginning of the year and had yet to return. Presumably, they would only appear in the residence on New Year's Eve. Yi Feng had long gotten used to his irresponsible parents. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry to raise him and hand over the E family's business to him before patting his clothes and leaving the E residence. Chu Qingyan felt that only such playful parents could raise such an unrestrained son. However, without the elders in the residence, they could avoid unnecessary greetings, and it made it easier for them to move around. After breakfast, at Yi Lingfeng's suggestion, everyone headed for the capital's bazaar. Because Mu Ling had a blueprint in her hands, she didn't finish it in time, so she stayed in the residence alone. Chu Mu's mother also stayed in the residence because she was tired from running around for days. Cheng Yinluo said she wanted to study herbs, so she stayed. Ethereal did the same. Thus, the group of people, Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, Ling Feng, Du Qing, and Chu Mu's father, left the residence. Mistress, look, is that a steam bun? Once out of the E residence, Xining was like a bird that had been released from shackles. She looked here and there, full of curiosity about everything in Zhang's capital. Chu Qingyan really wanted to cover the incessant chattering mouth. She felt as though she was bringing Granny Lu into the Grandview Garden. However, when she looked in the direction Xining's pointing, she couldn't help but be surprised. A steamed bun of all people? It's adorned with sesame seeds, peanuts, ginger, chopped onions, and almonds. It's different from ordinary steam buns. Look, that's a rose bun steam bun. That one, of it. Elder sister Dugu, why are you so familiar with this? She remembered that Du Qing wasn't from Jiang. Du Qing subconsciously looked at the person in blue robes. It was as if she had returned to the time when she met him on the streets of the capital. At that time, she was curiously standing in front of a pastry shop, sizing up the oddly shaped yet fragrant pastries. Then, he appeared just like that. Yiling Feng felt a gaze on him. He knew who it was based on the direction. However, he didn't look at her. Instead, he turned to talk to Xiao Su about interesting things in the capital. Du Qing was already used to not getting a response. She smiled at Chu Qingyan and said, because I've been wandering around the capital for 2 months. I've walked through all the streets and tried all the delicacies here. Chu Qingyan nodded. So that's how it was. Just by looking at those simple steam buns, they could create so many different designs. Chu Qingyan also wanted to go around the entire imperial capital to eat. Her foodie nature was exposed again. When Chu Qingyan asked, Du Qing explained again. She didn't have enough, so she simply became Chu Qingyan's tour guide. She was responsible for explaining the delicacies and scenery along the way. When the group came to an arch bridge, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of the stone bridge over the West Lake in the legend of the White Snake. Many scholars and beautiful women met on that bridge, got to know each other, and then developed into lovers. Chu Qingyan was just fantasizing. She didn't expect that this scene would really happen in front of her. Fenglang, what a coincidence. Why are you here? Didn't you go on a long trip? A woman with white lips and teeth appeared on the arch bridge. She looked at Yi Lingfeng in surprise and immediately went up to greet him. When Yi Lingfeng saw the woman, he waved the folding fan in his hand. At this time, his allergies were cured, and his appearance was still handsome. Today, he was wearing a blue robe with a jade pendant hanging from his waist. His face was bright like the moon, and his peach blossom eyes were like flowers full of love. So it's Miss Ru. What a coincidence to meet you here. How have you been? A magnetic and pleasant voice sounded, and Miss Ru's face turned red. Her cheeks were dyed red, and it was very lovable. I haven't seen Fenglang for many days. I missed you. I haven't gone out for a few days, so I'm a little bored. I wonder where young Master E is going today. This little girl can accompany you. Miss Ru said shyly. When Du Qing saw this scene, she coldly snorted, in broad daylight, you have no shame. Chu Qingyan was closer to Du Qing, and when she heard this, she couldn't help but look at Du Qing. She saw that Du Qing was still rather calm, and she was surprised. If it were her, she would have already gone up to Yi Lingfeng. She couldn't tolerate the man. She liked flirting with another woman. Before Yi Lingfeng could answer, a woman walked up the stone steps. She was gentle and graceful, charming and delicate. She was another beautiful woman. What a coincidence. Fengling, why are you here? When did you come back? When the woman saw Yi Feng, she walked over shyly. Yi Feng replied with a smile. Miss Lin, I just came back not long ago. I didn't expect to see you here. Miss Lin covered her mouth with a brocade handkerchief and smiled. Of course, you didn't expect that I would send someone to guard your mansion's entrance. As soon as they saw you come out, they rushed over. At this moment, Miss Rue and Miss Lin looked at each other. They could see the hostility in each other's eyes. But before they could spark, another 3 or 4 women appeared from the two ends of the arched bridge. They were chattering and wearing heavy makeup. Their target was very clear. They went straight for Yi Feng. It was the same opening speech, as if they were in cahoots. Fengling, what a coincidence. You're here too. When Yi Feng heard this, the corner of his eyes twitched. To him, a beauty in front of him was a visual pleasure. But if it was a large group of people, it wasn't a visual pleasure. It was a demonic pressure. Chapter 407. Thus, on the bridge, it was not a meeting between a scholar and a beauty, but a farce that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Where did you girls come from? Can't you see that I'm here first? You shrew, why are you squeezing me? Quickly move away. Good, you actually dare to step on me. Fengling, Fengling. The girls finally remembered their target and turned to look at Yi Feng. Then, Hua Jiu coquettishly said, Quickly come and uphold justice for me. Then, Yi Feng was drowned by the girls. Chu Qingyan had the foresight to draw a clear line between herself and Yi Feng the moment the third woman appeared so that she wouldn't be implicated. At this time, she was watching this farce with Big Ice Cube and her father. She suddenly remembered Big Ice Cube's order to Hualing. Big Ice Cube, did you do this? I merely spread the news. How many people will act upon hearing the news is not within the scope of my concern. The corners of Xiao Su's mouth curled up slightly. His smile was as calm as autumn water, and he didn't have the slightest awareness of being the main culprit. This is called the butterfly effect. Chu Qingyan watched more and more young girls rush up and clicked her tongue. With one hand, she pulled her father who was watching a good show, and the other hand, she pulled Big Ice Cube and was about to walk down the bridge. Although she admired the ancient people's ability to build bridges, which were much stronger than modern ones, she knew that the bridge also had a limit. With so many people, she felt a lingering fear just thinking about it. After getting off the bridge, when Chu Qingyan calmed her breathing, she unexpectedly saw Dugu Qing's figure. Big Sister Dugu, you don't plan to save young Mastery? Teach him a lesson, so he won't always be a womanizer and attract bees and butterflies. Dugu Qing rubbed her eyes as if she was tired. At this time, Yi Feng appeared in front of everyone with his clothes disheveled. The girls behind him were still arguing, as if they did not notice that the male lead had escaped. Cough, cough, there was a small episode. Please don't take offense. Yi Feng coughed with an awkward expression. Just as he finished speaking, he met Dugu Qing's bright eyes and unnaturally looked away. He did not know why, but he did not dare to look at those pure eyes. Tidy up your clothes. Xiao Su looked at his clothes that had almost been stripped off in disgust. Then, he led Chu Qingyan to the other side. Only then did Yi Feng realize that the buttons on his clothes had been unbuttoned and the jade pendant on his waist was nowhere to be found. His expression changed slightly. At this time, Dugu Qing passed by him and snorted coldly to express her dissatisfaction. If Dugu Qing had scolded him, he would have felt that it was normal. However, she only looked at him coldly as he was surrounded by a group of women. He found it inconceivable. He tidied up his clothes and caught up with the people in front of him. Little Feng, do you know what it means to go too far? Chu Machen's father, who had been busy buying and eating along the way, raised his head from the delicacies and looked at Yi Feng with a rare, serious look. I do. Why do you ask? Yi Feng looked at Mr. Chu in confusion. Jean Xin, who was walking to the side with his sword, heard Yi Feng's words and could not help but look sympathetic. Usually, when Chu Machen's father asked a serious question, it meant that he was going to criticize you. If you did not believe him, please listen. Chumachen's father swallowed the last piece of five-flower mantou in his mouth and said meaningfully to Yilingfeng, "Little Feng, do you know what is the noisiest thing in the world?" Without waiting for Yilingfeng to answer, Chumachen's father answered his own question. The first is the cicadas in summer. The second is women. Of course, other than my Kai and Dan Yang. In everyone's life, marrying a wife and having a daughter is enough. Haven't you heard that 3 women make a show? Going too far is as bad as falling short. You will suffer. If they were not outside, Chu Qingyin could not help but want to shout out to her father. Father is wise and mighty, awesome. Chumachen's father patted Yilingfeng's shoulder. He did not see his petrified expression and turned to his daughter with a cute smile. Kai, I want 5 copper coins. I also want to eat that glutinous rice. In an instant, the atmosphere changed. Chu Qingyin motioned for Xining to take out the money from her purse and give it to her father. Then she asked, Father, I'll ask Xining to give you some money. You can buy whatever you want. Okay? Chumachen's father immediately shook his head. No, I only want 5 copper coins. I'll get it from you when I need it. Isn't that troublesome? Chu Qingyin did not understand. No, that's not the case. That way, you'll know that Daddy has no money, so you won't forget Daddy. Whatever Daddy wants, you'll buy for Daddy. Chumachen's father took the copper coins, grabbed Jean Xian, and skipped towards the stall, saying that he wanted Jean Xian to protect him. Chu Qingyin rubbed her head. Although her father's words were a bit strange and sometimes incoherent, she had to admit that her father's words made sense if she analyzed them carefully. Sometimes, I don't think your father is stupid. Chu Qingyin couldn't help but turn to look at him when she heard his comment. His inky eyes reflected the dark green water under the bridge and sparkled with a mesmerizing light. His black robe made him look as clear as snow and proud as frost. Actually, I don't think my father is stupid either. It's just that he doesn't show it. Yin Luo didn't come out today because she wanted to study her father's condition and find a way to treat him as soon as possible. Chu Qingyin looked at the sun that had risen halfway in the sky and smiled slightly. No matter what kind of person her father was, he would be the person she wanted to be filial to for the rest of her life. As if sensing her emotions, Xiao Su's eyes softened and he raised his hand to cover her head. His voice was clear and gentle. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Yilingfeng still hadn't recovered from Father Chu's words. When he suppressed those inexplicable thoughts in his heart, he looked up and met Dugu Qing's eyes again. As if she had seen through his thoughts, he turned his head away awkwardly and didn't look at her again. After Chu Yang's father returned, the group of people went to the nearest tea house. At the same time, it was also the tea house with the largest flow of people in the capital. As soon as they entered, the enthusiastic waiter came out to greet them. When he saw Yilingfeng, his eagerness deepened. Young Master Yi, you're here for tea today. Would you like a private room? Or, no, we'll just sit downstairs. Yilingfeng was familiar with the place. Then, under the waiter's guidance, he sat down at a table by the window. What would you like to drink? Seeing that they were all young Master Yi's friends, the waiter enthusiastically introduced them. We have all kinds of tea here. Longjing, Bilyuakun, Maojin, a pot of Bilyuakun, and a few plates of desserts. Yilingfeng waved his hand and dismissed him. Today, drinking tea was secondary. The most important thing was to gather information. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.